It says we are live.
Coolio.
As close to on the dot as we can get.
It's good to know I'm alive. Good to be reminded.
Live, alive, and live with you all once again. But this time talk about Star Trek rather than sort of Star Trek. Although that was still quite Star Trekian. This is actual Star Trek. Hello, Ambassador. Welcome back. You've once again graced us with your presence.
Well, it's good to be back. Good to talk about some decent Star Trek goodness.
Some SNW. Because you'll be surprised to hear Stuart isn't back from the convention that he just got to today.
Right.
Shocker. So the Ambassador is jumping in to wonderfully... but as you guys did see, we did manage to move some schedules around to film, edit, release the edited review with Stuart. So if you want to know what he thought, then check out that. That did come out earlier today, 2 hours ago. That was a fun discussion, very much our first reactions. This has been after it sort of mulled in our brains for a bit longer, as we tend to do. As well as we did manage to get Saturday and a Sunday video done, so excellent. Yay for Stuart's very good internet actually at the hotel. Yay for random hotel. So you will see Stuart, except not right now because he's currently living his life at the convention. But we have some super chats though. If you want to read them out and celebrate the wonderful celebration of us.
Well, I've got, as far as I can see on my screen, it's Josh Knoll. Welcome to Captain, which is pretty amazing.
It's a channel membership. That's way bigger than a super chat. Josh.
Do they get another level where they can be captain of a specific ship? So be captain of the Defiant or captain of the Yorktown. That'd be an interesting one, wouldn't it?
Well, it's Stuart's domain on that, but there's only so many things you can add to it. But that would be, I think Stuart kind of maxed them out actually. But that's kind of funny. But Josh,
people would fight over being captain of the Enterprise.
Oh, you mean it's like a one-off? Oh, I hadn't thought that. Like a limited edition thing, like we have. Oh, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, because it's fun being captain, but I like to say, Josh Knoll, captain of the Yorktown, is here. It's much more interesting that way. I would suggest that. That's
really funny. Okay.
I'm not really the brains behind this outfit, but hey ho, creative designer.
We have got the outfit on, but Josh, it's a wonderful monthly. So let us know how long you've been watching us and what drew you to us, because that is very generous and very much appreciated. Thank you. But we have some of the super chats which started at the start of the stream. We have Brian Straight, $10, which is a lovely thing. Thrum of the Warp Core would be a great name for a band. I agree. Decent enough episode. Maybe the weakest yet, but only in a something has to be sort of way. Fair enough. Ozzy Medeiros, $5. Did the Spirit Commander switch bodies with the Ambassador or Super Captain Foley? No, luckily.
Yes.
It's all going fine. Well, I did get a better microphone, so it does sound better and clearer, so yay. Had a bit more time to prep today.
Yeah, still haven't got the same good makeup artist that Stuart's got. You know, so I've still got the bald patch, which Stuart obviously is bald, but he has a nice makeup artist come in and put on the false hair, and I just don't have that. So,
well, I mean,
you have to make do with my shiny top.
Well, it's because Shatner's
hopefully it's not as distracting as the flaws on SNW.
Yeah, Shatner's toupee artist are only in Canada, so it doesn't quite work. But can you hear his better microphone, guys? Does it sound clearer? Let us know. And how's audio level as well? Because I can't hear us live, so let us know what you think audio level wise. And Doc McGillicuddy, also $5. Hope everyone is having a good day. Yeah.
I think we are.
Not too bad.
It's a jubilee here. We're celebrating the Queen being on the throne for 70 years.
I'm not alive, but on the throne. My goodness.
It's a long time to be sitting on the toilet, but hey ho.
Yes, we all were on different thrones. Yeah, no, that's what a momentous thing for our country and for the world that we have shaped in good and bad ways. But I think primarily good once it's all come round the bend.
So Furious Fons, who's been a member for 26 months,
it's scary when that sort of comes
as captain. Well, it says captain at the moment. Wouldn't want to be the captain of the Yorktown or the Majestic or the Sitak.
I don't know if it's Sitak.
There's lots of ships we could put up there and give people a choice.
Yeah, if I was to say to you, because do you know what the Majestic is? I assume you don't, which version it is.
No.
But do you know, if we said it's the worst, most vicious sort of destroyed ship in the fleet sort of moment, what would spring to mind? Because it's that ship. Of all the single ship destructions in Trek, what would you say would be the worst, if you can guess?
Well, the worst for me is when they blew up the Enterprise.
That obviously doesn't count, because obviously that's the
Spock.
Enterprise. The other ones, obviously.
I didn't know anything about that film, and I saw people coming out the cinema when I was in California to watch it, and there was absolute silence. They were all shell-shocked. I wondered, what's so bad with the film? Everyone's silent coming out of Star Trek 3. Then I got to see it, and they blew up my Enterprise. Right, yeah. Aside from that, the Battle of Wolf 359s, where lots of things got smashed up. Is it in that?
It isn't, but that's actually a good guess. It's the DS9 shot where the Miranda gets hit by torpedoes and flies at camera in a fireball as it burns away. It's very impressive.
I've never seen that, I think.
It's like it's the best battle in Star Trek, pretty much, in terms of scope and scale. I do mention the Majestic in one of my fan films as we'll go on the Majestic, it's fine, knowing that obviously later in the timeline it does not go well. So, oops, a doodle. So we've got 30 people here currently. Obviously, wait for people to come in. I'll let you vamp while I start sharing. So talk.
Vamp again.
It's part of the job. Mention all the things and say other people.
Well, I seem to remember, having watched lots of Trekyards episodes, that you can super chat to get your opinions across and make us say virtually everything you want us to say within reason. Obviously, there are some levels of censorship that YouTube and Facebook would impose on us. But helps out the channel. Also, another way of helping out the channel is to subscribe and join as a rank of ensign or lieutenant or captain or admiral or president. And that helps provide a stable weekly income. And PayPal is also a very good way of supporting the channel, which has less commission charges, I understand. And if nothing else, just like the videos and share them around. So the bigger the audience, the more relevant the channel seems to be to the platforms, and the more goodness hopefully will come our way, because the guys do an awful lot in terms of producing content 24/7, really. I mean, Samuel's at it virtually day and night. It's full-time job for him, so he does give up quite a bit to produce this content for fans of Star Trek, which of course he is one of. So aside from that, pleased to be here again. Obviously not quite the same as Stuart, so I realise I'm a substitute footballer brought on just because the star's been injured and has to be carted off on a stretcher. But I'll do my best, and if I can, I'll get close to scoring some goals or not, as the case may be. And really looking forward to talking about SNW. And Samuel's not quite back yet because he's still sharing.
No, I am now. But it says Josh, who joined as captain, says he's been member for 3 months. So I wonder if that means that you left, Josh, came back, and it's adding up on that. Let us know, because that's a confusing double metric to hear from.
I will be captain of the USS Cerritos, and I want Pike's uniform from this episode.
Yes,
a nice green, proper green episode.
Green
shirt. Yeah, not too sure about the shoulder patches, reinforcements.
Gonna start a poll now, though.
Good. Like your polls. And waiting for the poll to come up. So, what else can we say? Spock Amok. I didn't even realize that was the name of the episode. I just saw it. Yeah, I'm very keen to talk about this one.
And they should... I'm not sure if it's a controversial poll, but which story do you enjoy more? The Pike Diplomacy or Spock Vulcan?
Ooh.
Vote now. And, Super Chat guys, if you can...
You should have had... Or do you like them both equally?
See, there's always a 51%. If you have to pick, almost all things will be still just...
If I had to pick, that is okay. Well...
Yeah?
I voted.
Otherwise it splits the vote too much. I like the more unanimously vibes. Makes people think the hard choices. We did our top 10 recently about something particular, and it was such shocking mentally to try and say, well, which do I actually enjoy most? I had to pick. You don't ever have to normally in your life. The bingo story.
Well, it's like when you're running a 100-meter race, the difference between the guy who wins and doesn't win can be 0.01 seconds. When you're trying to judge between episodes, the difference can be that, which is not really any difference you can actually measure, but there is a difference. Ozzy Medeiros is requesting a flyby, I think, to fly a tower. Yeah,
Top Gun
it looks
reference.
like he may have gone and seen Top Gun 2, which I'm keen to go and see myself.
Yeah, I did just get Top Gun 1 in 4K to try and rewatch it. Cause I told you before, I've only watched it on a car screen once while moving. That's my entire version of seeing it. So not quite the optimal experience, but I have watched it at
I
least.
think our closest claim to fame, Samuel and me, is we know the stunt, the double of one of Tom Cruise's doubles, who stands in for him in things like these Mission Impossible films, and also in Top Gun. So we know him, and he's worked with Tom Cruise, so we're that close.
So, as with all these videos, I always go to the other person first. So, what do you think? Not Stuart.
Ambassador.
Yep, no, I know. And how do you think it compares to the first four without obviously going too much detail, because it's more about general and then we jump into the full detailed. But yes, general thoughts.
Well, I've been traveling in time and space, so I've missed 2 or 3. So I think I missed 2, but I was impressed. I liked the episode. Obviously, it started off very well for an old-time classic, original Trekkie fan of the original series, when they actually used the proper Amok time music. And you think, that music's so good, as is a lot of music from the classic series. You could use more of it, because it really hits a note. Brilliant dream sequence. It's original for Star Trek. I can't remember any episode quite like that. And I'm always giving kudos to when they can come up with an original idea, and that certainly was an original idea. I think they're handling the relationship between him and T'Pring very well. I mean, they've cast her an excellent actress who's playing the part very well. I like the idea of the body swap. Obviously, that's more common in Star Trek. The very last episode of the classic Star Trek was exactly that, Turnabout Intruder, where Kirk had to try and think as a woman, and he minced around a bit. So you could say it's a bit of an exaggeration. This was much more subtly played, rather than camply played as William Shatner did in Turnabout Intruder. Visuals were very beautiful. I mean, again, you might say that the story's slow, but I quite like slow, thoughtful stories. My only, and it's not a criticism, it's just that I think Ethan Peck, that's the guy who's playing Spock, he's playing the character so well that it's somewhat of an injustice that it's not his own character. I would still be much happier if this was a Star Trek series independent of the classic period, set sometime after Voyager or wherever, where there were new characters and they have full control of their roles, and he got full kudos for creating a new Vulcan character, because it isn't really Spock as I know Spock, but he's doing a very good performance. I think it's a disservice to him to have to try and be Spock when he can make his own character so much better, if you see what I mean. As Star Trek, this is brilliant Star Trek. But I don't like the way they keep trying to shoehorn it into the past, and you mess around with the past. It wasn't necessary, really, because with this level of characterization, they've got the names Spock and Pike, but they're good characters with any name. You can give them any name, they could be anyone and still be just as good. I mean, Christine Chapel is obviously not Christine Chapel in any way, shape, or form. She's not going to develop into the Christine Chapel we know. She's an entirely different character, but a great character. So as a TV series and a Star Trek series, this is really, really good. It just wasn't necessary for it to make it in the Pike era. That's all I would say, really. I think Ethan's performance goes beyond that. It's worthy of being his own unique character that he owns, not following the footsteps of someone else.
Okay. Some diverse thoughts, different to Stuart as well, which is good. And guys, keep voting on the poll as well. We haven't talked about this yet, as I tried to do Stuart as well, so we're very much coming at this fresh. And obviously, if you've seen the editor review, one of the first things I said, and this will less be for you, but I said it may be my favourite out of the 5. It was a bold statement, considering we've had Gorn Battle, we've had First Contact, we've had some pretty broad topics, and to go for Vulcan Love Story being, that's an odd thing to say, but, and I was trying to work out why, because that's my gut reaction, but try and quantify why I think that. I think because out of all the 5, this one feels if it was the most together, as if at this point they've sort of worked out the formula and made a homogeneous piece. There isn't really any elements of it that bring it down, whereas every the other five, there's something that pulls it down a notch, or two or more. But I couldn't put a finger on anything in this one that kind of drew it down. And when the standard is so high, you've got to look for those things that are bringing it down, trying to differentiate. And this one I felt had a much more solid foundation, which is not what I was expecting to be enjoying this show. That said, the side stories with the... more so with number one and Laan it wasn't overly great because it wasn't very focused, but that in itself was the point, is that these people who are not used to doing anything out of the ordinary are doing something out of the ordinary in a way that isn't them. So it by tone it makes sense, but it wasn't the most engaging. What saved it is that they diversified what they were doing so much throughout the whole episode that they kept shifting things, bobs, tones, so you always sort of left enjoying the moment, even if overall I'm thinking, I mean, it was an okay subplot, but the way it was framed worked really well. So that was, but I don't think negative of it. It could have been better, but it wasn't given the time to necessarily breathe.
What helped that segment was the payoff, the very final thing they did, which we'll get into, I guess, later. That's number one. Again, I've never seen that in Star Trek, and I know that does happen with on real ships, shall we say. And that was such a unique thing, again, never seen in Star Trek. I like it when they can come up after all this time and all these hours with something new and different. So I really liked that idea. I really enjoyed. Again, there's a hint of the Orville with that, in that they were showing you the exterior of the ship, shall we say. There's more focus on the ship itself and beauty shots. Yeah, there's certainly some beautiful shots in this.
Technically, I would agree with that, but because the Enterprise is so dark and it was always attached to a space station, there's a reason why the classic beauties of it flying past left to right with the planet behind look so nice. Anytime you're attached to a station, you limit yourself. So technically, they're very nice, but it didn't make it breathe in a way. So,
I was thinking about the alien ship as well.
That was a lovely ending. That really helped, I think. Did you actually hear in dialogue they said Solar Sailor early on? See, I missed them saying Solar Sailor, but Stuart missed them saying that they only use it for ceremonial purposes. So in our review, we finished each other's sentence on that. But I did not hear him say that. I just missed it. So by the end, I'm like, oh, it's Solar Sailor. I got the actual complete surprise moment.
And I'll mention it when we get to that point. But they did something with the Solar Sailor. And again, makes me sound very emotional. I actually had a tear come to my eye when they did it. I actually felt very emotional. And that's a good sign of a show when they can do that.
It's shocking that this show came off the heels of Discovery and Picard, because tonally and understanding what it wants to be, it's so far ahead. It got extra development time because of the pandemic, fine, but it's now, is it just because everyone's positive? To a certain degree, Pike being the theory lead, positive. Spock, even though he's challenged, he's positive. T'Pring, very very strong and trying to work for something. And Benga, positive, doing good things. All the officers are actually good representations of Starfleet. No one has a deep dark past that actually makes them truly aggressive. Even though Laan has a dark past, she had fun this week. You see the side of her. Is it because they're actually all not necessarily relatable, but far more in that diagram than Discovery and Picard?
It's always interesting when you're writing characters because they're not, in a sense, real people, but you can believe they're real people, and how you can give them these nuances. And then, of course, there's the performance of the actors themselves, and they're given directions as to how to perform. The word it's not quite the right word. They're just nicer with an N, small N.
Yeah.
And they're the sorts of people you would feel comfortable chilling out with, a lot of them. It's a very indefinable thing, chemistry, which is why we get on with some people, we don't with others. Some people come across as being sharp or remote or distant or whatever. This is a performance, so I'm sure they're channeling some of themselves into this. But generally, they're just a nicer group of people. You get that impression. And I'm really impressed with Nathan. His performance is amazing. What the nuances he's getting across stand out.
And this is a really unique one because for Ethan playing Spock, in the other episodes of other shows and Discovery especially, there's obviously the question: is he playing too emotionful? And I say that because that's the balance that Nimoy just seemed to just strike effortlessly. He just had that something. Ethan has an interesting challenge here because of he's had a generally a good balance between the things. He tends to ire on more emotional in the subtext and strong on the outer shell. In this episode, however, you get the unusual situation of being inside a closed Vulcan themed room with a, in theory, loved one in a perfectly intimate situation. So of all the situations where you are allowed to be more emotional, that comes through in him far more in this episode, but it is perfectly perfect in context, which is then why it's interesting to see T'Pring, who is the full Vulcan, still be as sharp and yet somehow meet in the affection in certain sequences that just speaks to her as an incredibly good actress at being a Vulcan, just phenomenally cast.
But also good scripting, because they wrote those scenes so well. They really had to think that through.
But for Vulcan though, a line can be read 1,000 ways, and it's them that are bringing that to life. But to see the contrast then of the two people on the screen, the proper Vulcan and the half Vulcan, and he's throwing far more emotion out in any given scene, and that varies, but it makes sense why and when. So you can't really complain because of all the situations. You know, like even his dad, he would be more, compressed with. His mum, he would be almost reserved to not let her down. But this woman, he can actually be, a deeper self, which is super unique.
I mean, the original actress that played T'Pring in Amok time did a good job.
Yeah.
But this lady obviously has more material to work with and already has fleshed it out. But it's clear she's not going to develop into that character. She's different. So it's, again, if you accept it's a parallel universe, alternative timeline, whatever. But again, they would have been just as good if they. This show is so good they didn't really need to try and piggyback off the TOS brand. They could have just done their own thing with these sets of characters.
How would you have got Pike and Spock without the TOS brand?
No, well, you'd have a different set of.
But they explicitly asked for Pike and Spock. That's the only reason they got the show, is because the fans demanded it. You can't. What's the point of having Ethan and Anson as new characters in a new show? That's not what the fans asked for. So you couldn't have had it.
You know what I'm saying? That in the end, if they lost your sound, are you back?
Didn't do anything. But yeah, so interesting episode, guys. Please let us know your thoughts. Let's see what the chat is saying. Christopher Leonard says, Nurse Chapel can change into something more like the TOS Nurse Chapel. I was just engaged to Dr. Corby and then disappears. Squadra Course says, this is still season 1. Most shows take at least one season to find their footing. Well, that's a Trek trope. All the shows are best in the first season.
I think it's already found its footing, hasn't it?
Well, it did have Discovery as a baseline. They already had fleshed out characters, which has obviously been a huge help. Jessica, hi Jessica, says, I haven't enjoyed five Star Trek episodes in a row since DS9, which is an interesting point. 5 in a row. Discovery certainly hasn't done that. Picard certainly hasn't. Lower Decks, I would say, has, but they vary. Enterprise, I think we hard pressed to find 5 ones that truly go. Well, no, Expanse maybe 5. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Ward God 6 says Trekyards is the best YouTube Trek channel. Well, that's very kind.
That is very kind. Thank you very much. Makes our hearts soar.
It does. It does. But Stephen with a PH, not Stephen with a V, says, it's very simple for me. This is pure Star Trek so far, and it's what the fans have been asking for. As soon as Pike appeared in the Discovery, many wanted him to lead in a retro series, but he enjoys all Treks. That is, yeah.
As I said before, if we'd started with this, there'll be very few complaints.
Well, you compare this to 09, you think, oh god, wow, they got it right the second time. John has a really good comment to what you said about Chapel earlier. There's like 10 years to go. No need to rush the character arcs to get them into TOS so quickly.
Yeah, it's just that
some time.
I was brought up with Christine Chapel, and obviously I rewatch the episodes. So it's like, and obviously I've met Michelle Barrett a couple of times. And you have everyone understands characters in different ways and people in different ways. You have different relationships with people. So my understanding of her core and where she would come from to get to there isn't what we've got right now. That's just my personal experience of her as an actress and her performance and her as a person. But she's a great character. I really love her sassiness, and certainly a performance with her eyes and the subtext, the emotion she's playing across her face, with her, I guess, not so subtle growing attraction to Spock, which is what I think is coming across in some of that conversation with him. Why she found the other guy boring. She doesn't find Spock boring. I mean, that was all subtext on her face, subtle gestures. I thought it was really good.
Yes. I was going to say something about the development question as well. Well, think about who we all were in our early 20s to early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the exact same person with 10 years experience, because she's Chapel's, she's so young, she's not even in Starfleet yet. Not that she was, she's that young, and the actress is actually the youngest on the cast, I believe, is what I read. So, you do change a lot in those formative years. So I'll give it to her. And knowing you married someone who disappeared and that's a sting. Especially as it was now established she doesn't want to be in a relationship.
There's also were expectations of both women and men in the 1960s as they were in the 1930s. There were certain characters drummed into you by your upbringing, your socialization, your education, and the sassiness that you have in her now is not something that would have. Michelle Barrett was brought up in a different age, and so her whole character is as a person is different, really, to what you would be in the 2000s.
Well, this sort of. I use the same trope for Nim, for Keeley, let's be fair, but this sort of fun, charm, snark, that's of its time. That will phase out of being popular at a certain point, and we'll look at, 90s have a certain vibe, films, or early 2000s. When something is popular, that it makes its way into common culture, so we'll move past that as well. But there's a big orange super chat, Stuart, which makes... Stuart. Freudian slip, because, boy...
Shame I can't do impressions, isn't it, really?
Just say a boot. Just say a boot.
Well, it's gone and I've got to scroll up my page because it's whipping by so fast.
It's a boot. 20 books.
Taylor T. Wow,
yeah, amazing.
$20. I love the character building this episode. What were your thoughts on Pike's green wraparound? Thanks for the stream! !
That's definitely a you question.
Well, I loved it.
Oh, okay.
I like the fact I didn't like the shoulder reinforcements. I didn't think they were necessary. He's not carrying a backpack or anything like that might rub into the top. But no, it's great to see that and obviously the green coming across as green, which it didn't always come across in the lighting of the original series. But no, his performance again is wonderfully. Having met the actor, you've met him more than I have. His understated performance, totally different to how he is. I don't even recognize him as being the same person. It's really, really good. I mean, his diplomacy skills are outstanding, really. He's the kind of captain you want, really.
Yeah, they definitely want to make
even friendlier than Picard. I mean, in terms of favourite captains,
yeah. Well, he'll make you dinner, won't he? This guy.
Exactly.
Green Wraparound, we have a video on it coming out on Sunday. I like the fact that it's just a Discovery era version of the original. I'm not the biggest fan of the original because it just feels out of place to me. Therefore, the same complaint here, and it's very, very green. When it initially got posted, I thought it was a Photoshop, a joke, that it was St. Patrick's Day because it was that embarrassingly green, out of context. And we've all seen the pictures of the Wrath of Khan costume, Kirk in the green with a hat and a pipe. That's been done in Photoshop, and it's like, oh. They actually went so green. However, as we see in our episode, the lighting does affect the hue, the shade, and the depth of green. So it varies in how I feel about it. I mean, it still stands out, but it's canon, and I appreciate the love letter, even if I don't like the uniform that much personally. But it's just like I wouldn't be a fan of the one Dad's wearing coming back for Picard because I just don't like it in general. But that's a personal preference thing. So, but great attention to detail, and I watch our Sunday video. It's a good piece. All right, so we start off with some very nice Vulcan. I have no qualms to say very, very nice, artistically done, tastefully done, great hair, makeup, costumes, and this is a very good use of the LED wall. I found because they focus entirely on the foreground stuff, and it does allow the background to blend in better. And this is obviously why they invested in it, because you get these sorts of things. Where in reality, and here's a long shot, and if you're following the live, Dad, you can see it, all it is actors, that podium, and everything else is a LED wall. And you get this grand scope and scale, but because of the way it's framed, it just works very, very well. Or maybe the first set of torches are real as well. But
I mean, if you put this up against the original episode, you'd notice the differences, but without refreshing your memory of the original, this looks like a perfect or enhanced copy, even down to the weapons, which are slightly more innate than the original ones.
Yeah.
But beautiful. I mean, even maybe my memory is deceiving me, but even the sound of the gong was the same. But without listening again to the original, I wouldn't know. But you think it is. And this is when I heard this in the background before watching it. This music, is this music really from SNW? Wow, we've got the original Amok time classic music, which has gone into popular culture because it's been used in all sorts of things. It's been used in Family Guy. It's been used in some other episodes, hasn't it? It's been used in the
Lodex.
No, it's also been used in the one with the courier shuttle. What's it? Is 3,000 years in the. Forget the name of it now. The other one that Seth MacFarlane did, the space one.
The other space one?
No, Seth MacFarlane has done a cartoon, hasn't he, in space, with the Doctor with the claws and the courier service and one-eyed Leela. I forgot the name of the program.
You mean Futurama made by
Futurama.
Futurama. You mean Matt Groening, who made it?
Matt Groening. Sorry, Matt Groening.
Groening.
Well, I'm temporarily displaced.
He's a bit older than Seth. He was doing this in the 80s. Seth's doing it in the 2000s.
I'm just temporarily displaced.
But anyway, no, I exactly what I'd said. In fact, about if you don't, I'm just reiterating what you said. But if you don't watch them side by side, this feels like what it was. It doesn't feel like any visual reboot here at all. It just feels like the organic, shinier version. And that was the first time I think we've seen that, at least to me. And I won't even quibble. They had the costumes, they had the lure, but they had all the elements. I didn't even think it just was. So I get the feeling that they very rarely would get to genuinely show a future element because it's in the future. And so they said, well, we have this excuse, let's go all out. Because in reality, all they have is some light pillars, a middle bit, a costume, everything else is digital. So they could throw that all in one go and whatever. But I think they said, we'll just do almost entire TOS. This is a chance for us to kind of do a fun offshoot and make it almost 100%. So that's a credit to them for feeling about right. And symbolically, it was a good fight. The fact that Ethan played a more human Spock without the ears, actually acting almost fully human, was fun to see the dichotomy of the vibe because it shows how good he is when he's acting versus actually trying to be humanful. It's a very successful first scene. We did just watch this scene though in Orville, waking up from a nightmare. So it's a bit fine to have sort of 2 in 2 days. But
what I would say about this is, the original team that made TOS, if they had the opportunity, this is the sort of thing that they probably would have tried to do. So that's why I think it's faithful. It's faithful to the idea of what they wanted to realize as an image, if they had the budget and the technology. So a lot of recent Star Trek is they're wanting to do their own thing and go off in a different direction, but this is like what the original creators of this franchise imagined it would be like if they could have done it. So I loved it. Obviously, the music sets it tonally, really clues into lots of nostalgia and memories. And again, it's become an iconic piece of music. And to see that in this episode really grounded and instantly makes it a favorite. I mean, this little segment by itself almost justifies this new series, because you can go back and watch this and think it was all worth it just to have this sequence.
Yeah, it was shocking to have non-changed music. That they have a tendency to change everything because they can, and it's going to be so pure. There's a little ding of difference, but it was almost entirely pure. So that was damn refreshing.
Fantastic.
Joseph Stewart, Dad.
So
that's you. Read the thing from Joseph.
Joseph. Well, that's a bit further down then, I guess. My stream.
That's brand new.
So. Joseph Fleming, $4.99. I changed a lot between 21 and 31. People can change a lot in that time. Good point on standards changing. I'm okay with modernizing.
Yes. Except tech, which looks contemporary.
All okay with modernizing. It just depends how far you want to go.
Like for example, this fleet, this dock shot is very. It it looks nice, but it's cluttered and overly industrial. But I don't blame that. It's just they've write themselves into a vibe if it's all, you know, it's just a bit much, but it's still good in concept. But yes, then we have to Pring. He comes aboard because she's sort of taking time off work, and that's a point later on to try and have a, time with him because he left in the first episode to do the first couple missions, and she's making the time, and instantly has to apologise. He has got work to do, and she takes it on she takes it well. But tonight dinner, we'll have a nice day. You've got me for evening.
She does say specifically she's brought along an assistant to do the work that she doesn't have to do it.
Okay.
So she's delegated.
Okay. I missed that. But it's a nice vibe. They're very intense, but you get chemistry and like I said, Vulcan chemistry. It's a good little scene, and the fact that he tries to tidy his room slightly and she undoes it because she knows better. I don't believe for a second when he points out that he's redecorating soon, or no, he has redecorated. She doesn't like it, and he's like, shit. I'll change it next time you're here because it's already been influenced by a human.
So culture. I liked it when she said, "I'll withdraw my criticism until after your redecoration."
And it's like
lovely line.
Yeah, you got to change it. It's a nice room though, and there is enough hallmarks of the TOS. I mean, obviously it looks nothing like the TOS room, but if you stop and break down, you can see hallmarks, as is what they're trying to do.
I mean, the thing about Spock's original quarters, well, they were so small that you could put a few exotic things in, and immediately it made it feel alien. And certainly, Leonard Nimoy's quarters in the original series did feel more Vulcan.
And you have the briefing. Admiral April's back. There's a sector of space that if we make them join part of the Federation, we can have more safety in the area. And they cut to the first round of negotiations with the Trekyards, and they're being yelled at, which is ironic because obviously Trekyards are known for bickering, and so to be on the other end of that tells you how aggressive this new race must be. Yes. And then obviously get the wraparound as well. And Uhura is a touch type the entire time, which I found kind of amusing. But no, the aliens walk in, they surprise. Rather good makeup, I think. Zebra people.
No, I thought they were very good.
Yeah.
But they did give you a clue because I picked up straight away they said about being empaths. And if you know what empaths are, that immediately tells you how they are going to react in negotiations.
I mean, they obviously took it to an alien nth degree. You couldn't have predicted the full length of the story, but then it would be a bit dull if you could. But this was certainly an interesting curveball. They're setting up the idea of we'll have to go and do diplomacy, and oh wait, they're here. And Pike, I mean, considering he has no time to prep, he jumps to it very successfully. He lives up to his name. He tries to negotiate a little bit, and it's just really odd because, like I said, they're set up to be these aggressive people in the first scene, and they seem very amenable. So the episode kind of keeps you on your toes a bit with the slight tonal shifts, but they're satisfying because you're not expecting the direction. So no, good alien makeup. It's alien, but it's still human, which you don't need to have full CGI aliens. You don't have to have full heads of makeup. This is a good balance of clearly alien, but clearly guy in makeup.
But of course,
very TOS.
The guy's performance under that makeup, through that makeup, was very good. His performance was very good. Well, again, the script was very good. The lines he was given was very good.
Thanks, appreciate it. Have the rest of your day. And guys, 100 votes if we can for the poll. Where else? Which story do you enjoy more? We're currently a dead heat between the two storylines, so your vote could mean the winning of the one if you want to.
I told you the third option would be they're just as good as each other. Yeah. That's what people are saying.
Yes. And 100 likes, guys. Keep voting. We'd love to see those likes go up. But no, I mean, what do you think of this first chunk with the negotiation stuff? What was your sort of vibe about it? Were you sold? Were you invested?
I'm going to have a lot of difficulty finding any criticism of this episode because I just enjoyed all of it. So I thought it was all the plot lines were well and truly interwoven. So I found it very credible that who they were, or the negotiations they had. It's like someone sat down, as I said before. They've had time. They've carefully thought this through, and not have big plot holes and things like that. It's like, yeah, that all makes sense. It's incremental steps towards a goal. You don't rush it. Actually, that's the other thing about this episode. There was no rush to finish it because it was developing all the way through. Like sometimes they race to finish it because they box themselves into a corner, and you have a quick, almost like do Emishana ending. But no, yes, I mean it was a good.
I know that last week we got a little bit of flack from some people for being more critical of last week's episode, but it's not because people say, we're too nitpicky. We're just analysing it in a detailed way. I actually avoid nitpicks because I don't find that useful. And so when we find an episode like this that's so solid, we're going to say that. So, we're known for being fair, but those that love something will obviously call us out for being too unfair, even though we're being fair, because we justify all of our points, etc. So this one, it's hard to...
As we've said previously, we would get a whole load more views if we went hard and nasty on all these things and just moaned like some other channels. Sometimes people, they don't find positive statements about things as interesting as gossip and negativity. But it's very difficult to be negative about this episode because there's really nothing to be negative about as a solid piece of sci-fi, Star Trek or not.
Well, speaking of, though, they get to the transporter room. What do you think of so many of the characters being in entirely civilian costumes that could have just been straight out of their own personal wardrobe?
I didn't even notice it. They're just people.
But that's the thing, though. You mentioned Star Trek. I mean, should Nurse Cheryl be wearing a generic pink hoodie that she could just have worn off the set? Does it not take out the emotion a bit?
I was just focusing on their performance, and of course the guy in the front is wearing the closest you've got to a TOS outfit for whatever reason, trying to make his outfit look like Dr. McCoy's. They made it look like the classic Spock outfit. So I just love seeing that. I like seeing the proper high collar.
Obviously not the question I asked in that context, but I thought it was interesting. I'm so torn. Whatever you say about the TNG civilian costumes, at least they looked sci-fi.
Right.
Like, they don't date because they're so dated. These are just clothes. And in fact, they'll probably date even more so because they just look like our contemporary clothing rather than alien. But it was an interesting choice. And then, the hat. And I didn't quite get the calling out number one for being a not liking fun. I didn't quite... They didn't mention a nickname. I'm confused why they... Did you get that properly?
It's like a Lower Decks thing, isn't it? Lower Decks have these names you've seen in the cartoon series for people who are the bridge crew. I mean, that's the sort of thing that goes on in the Navy and all the forces, but yeah, it seemed a bit contrived.
Yeah, the way it was introduced I thought was a bit odd. Yeah, just a little bit odd.
But I was so much enjoying the ride, I was prepared to let all sorts of things go.
Which is why we're here, because we have to do those breakdowns to be fair. But we go to their quarters, and it turns out either she prepared or they prepared a full Vulcan meal. So it isn't just you didn't come in for dinner. It's like, well, we made these plans, we made effort, and you chose everything else except me. Which obviously, if you're actually on duty, that's a really unfair thing to say. But in theory, it's after the duty shift because you wouldn't organise dinner in your duty shift. So I guess the argument is it was already going to be out of work, so he chose to work extra hours, and therefore it's now his fault for doing that, I suppose.
And not letting her know, because it could have taken a couple of seconds out for the meeting to say, I've got to go to the...
I'll be 15 minutes late. Yeah,
I've got to go to the little Vulcan boys' room and pee green pea, or whatever his colour is.
Oh. We have two more super chats. One from Jeff Stern, $2. Thank you. Have my first pitch meeting tomorrow. Wish me luck. Oh my goodness, Jeff. Good luck. Wow.
Right, good luck.
Kick bottom. President Mark Lawrence, $5. Hello, Ambassador and Commander. Hello. Missed yesterday since I was out on the road delivering tech to schools. I'm glad Pike figured out with no help. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. He wasn't entirely there. Oh, Han, I can too. I just wish they were more sci-fi looking, that's all. Just like more in keeping with the Trek aesthetic rather than our aesthetic. That's all.
Well, like they did in the motion pictures. When Sulu's outfit and McCoy's outfit.
Yeah, they're more alien-y modern. Yeah, that's a good example. Because no one would wear, like, the Kirk jacket's very specific. But what do you think of the T'Pring you didn't come for dinner scene? Did it break your heart?
Me?
Yeah.
I like the way it's pitched because to be upset is an emotion, but is to be disappointed an emotion. So she's
Ooh,
disappointed. They're not
interesting.
allowed. They're not allowed to get angry. They suppress
Interesting.
that. They've suppressed being upset. So what can they be? It's got to be disappointed, which is not so much of an emotion. Because obviously, if she was fully human, she'd be probably quite pissed.
Is a very good reading of that.
But if he's logical and they're very precise and they think mathematically and orderly, even if he is in the middle of negotiations, it's not impossible to take 30 seconds out from that to communicate to the person, I'm going to be late in order to free them up to use their time more productively, which would be the Vulcan thing.
Mm.
So I find it slightly unusual that he's so thoughtless that he wouldn't do that.
But we've all been in situations where you just lose the time and boom, 2 hours have gone and
Yeah,
you're
but
always on your feet.
he's a super intellect as a Vulcan.
Yeah, but
And it should still be in his mind he has this important reconciliation date with his
but also
partner.
this might be his first time on the ship for a very long time. This is a new field for him. He's not, that's part of the point is that he's not in relationship mode at any point. So it's kind of a double whammy. But I like that point. She can't be pissed, but she can be. What can she be? No, good analogy. And then we move on to the. I was thrilled, in fact, about this scene because in the trailers we were shitting ourselves. This was going to be the Enterprise restaurant, the massive restaurant-looking restaurant in the Enterprise, and thank it was the station because boy. Some little things piss you off, and 10 forwards or the forward raised 2 is already silly enough. But luckily, no. It's just then, size, whatever the hell you want, but not on the Enterprise. So phew. I assume you didn't even think that, but I was very thrilled. The relief was real here.
I do like her outfit.
See, that's more alien. That's more. And also, I noticed why she got 3 marks on her arm. I know you haven't got screen caps, but she's got 3 like birthmarky because it's very distinct. I think they'd hide that if it was makeup. But a weird little scene that basically she has a friends with benefits with this man. I guess he's on the station, and she doesn't want commitment, and he ends up wanting something more, and she ends up, which is funny because she's like so confident that he doesn't want anything, but he likes her, and it's quite a sweet scene. The guy is totally dismantled. It's harsh.
So it makes you wonder what's happened in her past that's made her be like this.
Yep, because it's pretty visceral. Like he's very bad at picking up expressions because she's like in the scene and he's oblivious, so she's not subtle in her feelings in this.
So is there something in her parents' relationship that she doesn't want to replicate, or she's been committed to someone and really, really hurt, and so she's not wanting to commit again? So it's already creating a backstory behind a backstory. So you've got Christine Chapel from TOS. Now we've got her backstory as generated by this new iteration, which also has its own backstory to justify the backstory that we're now being given. But no, she's very engaging actress. Definitely got screen presence and sex appeal. So I can see why they fell in love with her when they were casting for this role.
I think this one she's really she went outside the bubble in this one. She went beyond just being the snarky, fun lady, and that she showed a lot of range in one episode.
Yeah.
Which I think really.
The counselling of Spock. I mean, hitting. There's a different chain of command, but she was still hitting.
She's not in Starfleet, so.
Isn't she? She's a doctor.
Nope, she's a civilian.
Really?
She's that was a big point they made in the first episode. She's on loan from her research center to do the facial stuff. But even though she has rank on her, she's actually not Starfleet, which was the way of getting around that she's not in Starfleet at this point. She isn't.
But of course, that's also it could be an accident. But they're harking back to the fact that Nurse Christine Chapel slapped Spock around the face several times.
Not an accident. No.
It's definitely canon foreshadowing there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I like slapping you around the face, Spock. Let's do it some more.
In a decade or so. Yeah, it was a good scene for her and for clearly deflection to go over and touch Spock. But what I liked about that is that it wasn't. Oh, well, Spock wasn't quite yet, but she goes over to help him. And you get the two ladies saying, "Who needs time off? That's boring. We like to do stuff, or recalibrate those phaser calls. Oh, hi, that is what I like doing. Wonderfully nerdy." Yeah,
Scotty again. He was very disappointed when he was told to take shore leave.
Yeah,
he wanted to sit down with his technical manuals.
But if this is where you wanted to be your entire life, But also for Una. Oh, well, that'd be a spoiler. You haven't watched episode yet. Actually, no, I can't. Both their backstories in other episodes I could talk about. Fair enough.
I don't mind. But I will recall something in my own personal experience. Is I was considered to be a bit of a nerd, or one of my teachers called me a swot because I much rather do some studying of history than take part in sports day, and they could understand that. There are other reasons, why I was focused on my studies. But you got the example here. I wanted to study. I loved information and learning, and doing sports and watching people running around a field didn't really engage me. So I'm with them. I would probably want to stay on the ship.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially as she said, as they both of she's they the ship is so busy normally, so just get to walk through the halls and appreciate it and do small things. Sometimes having a day off, as in we make a day off for ourselves, we don't have them, we make them, and then just do basic house things that we've been trying to do for a year, very satisfying because they're small things, small fixes or decorations. Like, wow, this was very satisfying because you could do them any day of the week, but to have this sort of bonus time makes them different and appreciate the space you're in. And I bump into ensigns, who I appreciate they both had a youthful glow to them, because no one in the show is overly old, so I like who they cast here. Didn't notice until this review, but she has a tricorder on her gauntlet, which actually has the Moai pattern, which is very subtle, very nice touch detail, and I did not notice it previously. Obviously, you'll see that when it comes back up.
Right.
And Bolian. I love Bolians, personally. Something about them. And I believe there's the first Bolian, the youngest we've seen in Starfleet, so that canonises them as being a member world for a very, very long time. So another Bolian to the although not a barber, although I guess we can't assume that. But yeah, another Bolian. I like Bolians. Any thoughts on catching the youth on that little moment? It's a bit random, isn't it? They're in the airlock and.
Well, I just was a bit surprised that they would be doing such irregular things, given how they've been through Starfleet Academy and were picking the best of the best. I know one needs to let their hair down, but there are rules and regulations. So I thought, really, would they be doing this on a starship? Sneaking out an airlock?
But there's also probably a slight sense that once you've got to this place, you can let down your hair a little bit, potentially, especially on a day off. Potentially.
So they wanted to go.
Their place.
But hey, it's drama, so.
And then we get the Nurse Chapel scene, which I also celebrated, not just the hotel or the restaurant, but because in the trailers it implied these two are going to have a love arc, which I always felt was a little bit forced in TOS. It was just a thing that happened. It wasn't an intentional thing. So when they included some flirting in episode 1, that's one thing. And the trailers I was annoyed by slightly, but this was very much more genuine advice, genuine help, genuine vibes. It wasn't that what we were expecting, so I appreciate this a ton more and kind of grounded them both as well as Spock choosing to eat alone in a restaurant as his human Vulcan confusion, because logic would dictate not to be in a loud room, and as you know, Vulcans don't like the smell of humans, so a smelly, loud place for people that you don't talk to, it's the wrong place to go if you want to be alone. But a human, they do that. That's why bars are a thing. That's why people go to bars. It's just a human nature thing. So it was interesting to see that. I kind of thought it was a mirage or something. How weird it felt to have him there by himself.
Well, when we came to the scene, it did seem very natural. And as I said, I really liked her micro expressions on her face. Her inner monologue, which you couldn't hear, what she was thinking, what she thought she should be thinking in that scene about what I took to be growing interest in this man. It seemed to be playing out on her face in very, very subtle ways. I realized, like a realization that there was something she was more interested in this person.
Yes and no. I took it more as she's talking to him as a deeper beyond the rank and the job, because who is Spock outside the job? No one knows. So yeah, I like you intellectually, but Spock wasn't giving any signals of reciprocation. It was all obviously about.
Oh no! So I thought I saw in her gestures, like she started this conversation as a colleague and helping. It's almost like she caught herself. I'm actually attracted to this man. I got that sort of like looking inward expression on her face, like some realization, not that she knew she was, but some growing sense that she might. That's what I thought I saw anyway, or maybe I was just reading too much into it.
Yeah.
Worth watching again. I mean, it's not often I say with new Trek that I like to watch episodes again, but
Rare as anything. Yeah. I think I'll finish the poll that I asked with 111 votes. We have a winner.
Good.
It is.
Okay.
What story do you enjoy the most? With a slight win, 54% Spock's Vulcan story and 46% Pike's diplomacy story.
Yeah. Told you it would have been 50-50 if you put a... Do you think they're both as good as each other?
But George has a comment.
A new comment. George Mangrum. Those scars are actually on Jess Bush's arm. Not sure why they didn't cover them up. So maybe some accident she had in childhood. Who knows? Sometimes scars have personal meanings for people, and they're quite proud of them. So, like to show them off. And Samuel's busy doing something technical, probably. So that leads me to talk about this next scene in Spock's quarters, where they're trying to get inside each other's heads so they can better understand each other's perspective, which is will be quite early on in the season, because we didn't know in TOS that this could be done. I mean, the whole thing was Leonard Nimoy's idea, I think, about being able to do the fingers on the head and be able to my thoughts are your thoughts thing. That was an idea that I think Leonard Nimoy actually had.
Nimoy was a nerve pinch. I don't think he was the Vulcan mind meld. Otherwise, he invented everything. But he was a nerve pinch for sure.
I thought I heard that somewhere that was his idea as well.
Well, then he invented everything Vulcans have, which seems a little bit far-fetched.
Well, he's a talented man.
But I asked the question, though, in a new poll. Does the Freaky Friday-style body swap work in Star Trek? Yes. Worked and comical. No, didn't quite work. A little bit too silly. Or I don't mind either way. Vote now. But yes, obviously, I don't think you see a body swap coming. It's quite a left field. It's just kind of a let's share our vibes. And for suddenly to go comical and be like, oh no.
Well, it doesn't happen that often in Star Trek. I mean, you put Catra in to say that they inserted that scene in Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, when Leonard Nimoy said, "Oh, I'm having so much fun. I do want to come back after all, as long as I can direct." So they had to insert that scene. And obviously, Picard was carrying around Sarek's consciousness, or didn't he, for a while, or shared it with him?
Yeah, he didn't show his cut because Carter's a huge deal. In theory, should well, Archer carried Surak's consciousness. That was a thing that happened.
Right.
But it seems more impractical than I guess it is.
It just seemed a bit too easy. I would have. There should have been more flash bang wallop. It's just like by accident just slipped in, to something more comfortable clothing wise for such a big deal.
I know they said in a very small way, because our special emotional bond did something extra, but yeah, they didn't really give too much of a why this happens, because this is a thing you can do. Boy, the usefulness in the battlefield, in the space field of super useful ability.
I mean, they did obviously, jumping ahead, not too much, but they did make getting out of that situation slightly more convincing in terms of what was involved.
But still done in one try.
Yeah.
Without any repercussions. I mean, it's still very, very easy. But
super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Some might just say. But it's a very interesting idea, and as actors, to act like a different Vulcan version. I always wonder in these moments if the other actor does the scene how they would, and then the person takes cues from that, or they just do it as an impression. I've always kind of wondered. I mean, it obviously varies on sets, but considering I think both did a good job, and certainly when Ethan jumps back to his original version, at the end you do feel the difference. I think probably T'Pring's actress did a better job playing Spock, because she's had to be a bit more wooden and a bit more back straight vibe. But it's such a really hard one to do. but I think they both did a good job.
No, I enjoyed watching it, and
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the fact that you really got the sense that they were learning about each other's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just done for comic effect, it wasn't just done to carry a story forward. It actually had repercussions that actually moved the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel like it was just thrown in as a gimmick, shall we say?
Yeah, it also didn't push into the realms of too silly either. It might have been close, but it maintained its seriousness to a point I felt that was balanced. Because the whole thing was, a tightrope you can play with body swap. You can go really, really, really silly.
Or Freaky Friday.
But that's a comedy. That
yes,
is.
I mean, that's how far you can go with it.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Or Big is another one where the
yeah,
guy.
sort of, yeah, close. But then obviously Pike walks in. I noticed the body language between the two of them. It's a silly scene, but Pike is so likable, and it's obviously interesting then to see the difference where T'Pring speaks about duty, and she keeps using that word too much, I think. But in this scene, she has previously said, "You choose Starfleet over me." But in this scene, it's fun to then have Pike be so point blank of, "Galaxy's at stake. We need you. Like, this isn't negotiable. This isn't a choice. It's an obligation." And so you imagine, like with the T'Pring later on, you have obligations that if you don't realize how many of them you have, like we can't just not go to work, especially if the work needs to be about you.
Again, I love the dialogue. I love the careful using of phrasing. It really seemed organic the way they carried it forward. The explanations, try not to tell him that what had happened, and eventually we better tell the captain. And the way he just took it on the chin. I mean, his face and his body language was just priceless as Captain Pike. Again, subtle, amused, but bemused is the word. And well, we've just got to get on with it. I mean, just brilliant.
I said to Stuart earlier that, okay, well, I can't say to you spoilers, but we've had 2 weeks of improbable things happening, right. and years before that. So let's be honest, if he was to say, "You swap bodies? Oh God, guys, what do we do?" And Spock would say, "Captain, we've had this situation. We've had an obscene situation like this for the last 5 years. This in itself is not the biggest deal." So the fact that he's like, "Oh, what about tomorrow? Do the thing today. It was a different take, and obviously they've been through worse, and so they can solve it. And if it's a thing that happened through Vulcan telepathy, it could probably be undone with Vulcan telepathy. So I thought it was surprisingly organic as well.
We'll get back to like talking about Doctor Who regenerating the Time Lord several times. Okay, they can forget things, but they've lived thousands of years now. They have all this experience. Exactly, the Doctor in the new iteration should not be faced by certain things that she's seen or heard of tens or hundreds of times before.
That is true.
So in Doctor Who, that's what makes it so less credible these days, is because they're acting like they're just out the starting block.
Hi, Jason.
I've never had these experiences, whereas in this episode you just pointed out, these experiences are part of the story, so they react accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. Although KK points out, it actually kind of annoys me that they openly talk about the Carters. Didn't Sarek say to Kirk in one of the movies that Spock wouldn't have spoken about that openly? Thoughts?
Probably right. I mean, but that's what retconning is about, isn't it, really? They're trying to tell new stories using established material, but building on that material, which gives you a bigger backstory than you would have had when you watched the original storyline. So,
I'm not, again, anything in their own private quarters I'm not concerned about, because it's Vulcan to Vulcan. Pike is a tricky one, but he would have to explain it to talk about it in this specific situation, and then once Pike mentions it to the Doctors, it is a bit odd, but once something is revolving around that happening, it's quite important. But anyway, we get to the good cop, bad cop, and I did somewhat laugh out loud when they said, she bugs his bad cop, and the counterbalance was silly, and it was silly, and tonally it was odd. These are all on purpose things, though, which is why it's hard to critique them, because it does feel odd. But to have them be so, the person who's not friendly, number one, be extra friendly, the one who's, I guess, more friendly in general, and just
My
sort of,
my problem with this episode was the room. I couldn't imagine you'd have that type of interrogation room
yeah.
on a starship. That was playing to 21st century tropes about what police do. What is this room? Is this an interrogation room
Yes.
designed to be for interrogation?
Yes.
But that's too primeval for the 24th century, 23rd century.
They have gun holsters for phasers. That's pretty primeval.
And I just for me personally, that jarred the actual room where they were actually doing that to people. I mean, to Starfleet people as well.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't feel right for sure. It should have been in the ready room, Pike's office,
or someone's quarters.
someone's quarters. Yeah, it's extremely. It's a superficial scene, although I think it's well acted. Yeah, it's very out of.
Well, they were
context.
having fun with the episode. They come across as having a lot of confidence in what they're doing. It's not misplaced confidence. So again, it was fun to watch as a counterpoint.
Mm-hmm. But we have another super chat from Saucy Publisher though. If you want to read that.
My thing doesn't seem to be going down automatically, so I have to scroll down and find it.
Mm-hmm.
Or scroll up and find it. Oh, a Saucy Puppet Show. I didn't think I'd like the body swap stuff, but they did it pretty well, even if it was dangerously close to hijinks. Yeah, doing body swaps between two Vulcans who are unemotional or should be unemotional was a challenge, wasn't it? Because as it said, both could come off as wooden performances, but they've cast these two actors very well, and I'm very impressed by the lady who's playing T'Pring, the way she's delivering her performance. And Matt Borman says, I think that anyone who has been in any sort of romantic relationship could appreciate the perspective they each gained about the other from this experience. Yes, which also makes me wonder why T'Pring in Amok time did what she did. That's why I can't think that this T'Pring will evolve into that T'Pring, because she would have this insight, really. So...
But yes, next scene we get the Vulcans talking to her, T'Pring or not T'Pring, I should say, talk about the mission, which neither me or Stuart quite understood what they were doing. What I think they said is that there's a guy who is a Vulcan who doesn't want to work in logic anymore, but they want him to work in logic, so therefore she's like a therapist they're sending out to talk to him.
I got the impression he was some kind of criminal.
I mean, he was very chill at the end, and he was just...
almost got the idea he was like a terrorist.
But he was in a garden with other Vulcans at the end of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they didn't have enough runtime to handle all these different threads.
I didn't quite get it.
I got the impression what crimes are different on different planets, what would not be a crime here is a crime there. So he was considered to be a criminal to Vulcans for whatever reason, and part of that also was abandoning logic. So she was trying to give him a chance to be rehabilitated.
Squadron Course, though, says, why is it offensive to have an interrogation room? To me, that's like saying the ship doesn't need to have a brig because they're too advanced to need one. Just my 2 cents. Thoughts?
Well, you can have brigs and brigs. They could be brigs which are stark and threatening, or you can have them which are comfortable places to keep people. If you're advanced in your human relations and you get information out of people in a more productive way than, for the worst example, be torture, which is normally counterproductive, you don't have to have that type of intimidating environment to hold people or to interrogate them. I mean, at this point, of course, they should have all sorts of very elaborate chemical methods of getting people to tell the truth, or possibly even computer things, on the brain they can register. We can actually read people's thoughts to some extent, at least their emotional states. It won't be too long before we can possibly read actual thoughts. Just seemed a bit too stark for that, the sensibilities of the time, shall we say.
Yeah.
It's more like what we would do if we wanted to have a room to interrogate people in. The whole idea, Gene Roddenberry's whole idea about the 23rd century, 24th centuries, we're much more advanced as human beings. We sort out most of our personal problems, and we're just generally nicer about the way we go about things.
Well, and just the very fact of why even have an interrogation room? Why not talk to them in the brig? Why have a separate room dedicated for this?
You could talk to them anywhere, really. They're not prisoners.
Even if they are prisoners, they'd be in the brig, or you
Yeah.
take them under armed guard to the observation lounge, or there doesn't need to be. With space on ship is very limited. Wasting this space for this purpose is. I mean, how many times in a year are you going to interrogate anybody? Hopefully zero. And in TNG, certainly the interrogations were in the brig behind a force field. You just went up and talked to them. Like, you didn't need interrogation scenes, so it's just the entire point of it, I guess. And if you were clever, like I say, you just do a brig / interrogation space and the same thing. Having separate is just unnecessary and modernistic. But Leon has the radical comment of Star Trek is a TV show, pure entertainment. But it seems to many people they struggle with timeline. So maybe forget about this and that's happened before and just watch the show. So he is saying, ignore about Star Trek canon, ignore the timeline, ignore the history, ignore what makes Star Trek, and just watch it as a TV show.
Well, as I said at the very beginning, if this was a science fiction show, not Star Trek, I would have even less issues with it because it stands by itself in terms of characterization, story, whatever. But I didn't know Gene Roddenberry very well. I have met him and met his family. And yes, he wrote a TV series, but he also had some very grand ideas about what the future should be like in terms of positivity. So for him, the creator of this universe, it was more than a TV show. It was an idealistic vision of the future to give people hope. So it never started out just as a TV show, as some other ones might have started out.
But
If you've ever,
also, there's shows called Dark Matter and Terra Nova and others that are just TV shows. Clearly, there are a few mediums in all of the world that have been active for 50 years. No TV show, I think, in history has had 5 concurrent spin-offs at the same time, plus movies in development. It clearly isn't just a TV show, it's a worldwide legacy phenomenon that's changed the entire world forever and will continue to do so. So calling it just a TV show is diminishing literally the entire history of it. Most shows do not have a legacy or longevity. All the sitcoms, all the dramas, all the sci-fi shows randomly. Lost in Space doesn't even have the same legacy, of the ilk of the time. Star Trek's the only one, that and Star Wars, that both have this sort of cultural phenomenon, true legacy building. And if you throw away all canon, then there's no grounding. Anything can happen, which means why care? Why care if the Enterprise gets hit or not get hit? Doesn't matter. Why care if Spock is emotional? Doesn't matter. If there's no reason, there's no depth, why care? Why even be invested? Because every episode is a flaccid, meaningless thing you watch and move on. Why be invested if there's no investment to have? So no, the canon is the most important thing in Star Trek. It's the tapestry that everyone lives in. By putting a show or a TV show or a cartoon or animated thing in an era of Trek, you create the emotional context, the technological context, the story context, the distance context, the how people feel at certain ages, the how they grew up. All that comes from the canon. So yes, it's thoroughly important, and throw it all away is why even bother at that point? So I'm sorry you think that way, but I think most would disagree.
I said Gene Roddenberry obviously wanted to have a successful TV series, but he wanted a vehicle to make social commentary to deal with very pressing issues of the time. If you weren't born in the 60s and can't know what it's like to have a show like this appear suddenly, it was almost groundbreaking when you're having things like Lost in Space, the original Lost in Space, or Buck Rogers, with these very plastic-looking spaceships. I mean, and some of the designs, even now when the technology stand up with the phase and the communicator, things like that. But we had it's a social civil rights crisis in America. We have those marches, black people are still being, as they are now, repressed, but even more so. And this series, created the first multinational crew, having a black woman in it, who actually took the command captain's chair at one point, having Russians who are our enemies, having Japanese people who we'd been fighting recently in the Second World War, like 20 years beforehand, all these people, and dealing with these important issues about civil rights and things like that. So it was always more than a TV show to Gene and the people who worked with him. And that's why a lot of the people who worked with him are very protective of it, and they don't like some of the way it's been dumbed down to be. Some parts of it be made into just an entertainment vehicle to generate money with no other purpose beyond that.
Most TV shows don't inspire generations of engineers. Most TV shows don't do all that stuff. Star Trek did.
Most TV shows don't have the Constitution of the United Federation of Planets, which, if you've ever read it, I mean, it is based on the American Constitution, but the ideals in that document that was produced during Gene Roddenberry's tenure is extremely idealistic and positive about the future. Star Wars doesn't even have that, does it? Really? I mean, it has a Jedi code, I guess.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but also the it's like, the big reason why the Avenger films are successful is they built up the groundwork of canon over the last 20 years. If they didn't care about canon, you wouldn't have stakes. Without stakes, you wouldn't have drama. You wouldn't have built up tension. So, people say canon doesn't matter. The entire Avengers franchise, the entire Marvel, is built on canon, where you are developing and building stories. If you don't care about canon, you can't enjoy those films because you're ignoring what makes them really interesting, which is their developing universe, etc., etc. But anyway,
well, it's horses for courses, isn't it? You can have TV programs which are just TV programs, and then TV programs which aim to be something more. And Star Trek has historically aimed to be something more than just a TV series.
I think it might be one part of why Discovery also fell. It was barely even a TV series.
Yeah.
In terms of quality. So that's, Discovery isn't inspiring anyone, engineer-wise or whatever. But you get the top 10 list of things to do, the Trek Bingo, or the Enterprise Bingo, which was released online, and we talk about our review, doing 10 things as a fun ensign, etc. And they decide, screw it. They think we're sticks in the mud. Let's prove them wrong and do it to try and get a sense of what they were like. And beaming to reconstitute
the taste of something, which is that's an original thing. I don't think I've ever seen that in Star Trek before. But talking about beaming, I do like the mixture. I think you've said before in one of your lives, the mixture of the classic Cage and the Enterprise beaming sounds in one. That's a nice little touch.
It's very nice. Yeah, keeping that as a really good touch.
Rather than that swirly like thing they have in the films.
Yeah, it's a very good sound effect. We got a turbolift sequence where they actually do use the side handholds, which they have ignored other scenes, but showing that's the point. And it's a good question. Two people give an order. What happens? That's a question. Again,
that's original. I've never seen that in any form of Star Trek. So they're racking up points for originality in this episode.
And she shoots a superior officer in the arm with a phaser at low stun. That I don't think works quite as well as the scene, but it's because they don't commit to it.
I'm not being nitpicky. I love the episode, so I'm having fun. No. At low stun, it wouldn't sting. What it would do is your arm would be numb. You wouldn't feel anything at all. There'd be no pain. For it to sting, it would be at a higher setting than that. Stun is what it means, to stun.
I would probably disagree, because I would assume the opposite. The lowest would hurt and be annoying. Higher would stop body parts from working. Because what if you want to stun a leg so you don't want to walk on it? It'd be different, minimal pain versus not use. I would say slightly higher would be to start to...
Well, it's a bit like adding anaesthetic. A small amount of anaesthetic gives you a small area of numbness. A bigger anaesthetic numbs more of the body. That's what I would say.
I guess what's more annoying, if you were to try and run away and someone pricked you in the leg with 50 little needles or made it numb, which is more annoying to walk on. Well, one hurts, one is hard.
It's not about annoying, it's about achieving an aim. You can't walk if your leg's numb.
Yeah, but
it doesn't need to
No, I know. So that'd be higher stun. So I'm saying higher stun. Lowest stun barely does anything, because who even uses the... What does lowest stun mean? If it's not going to stun you, what's the point? I think it's a joke, like it's so low power, it's basically meaningless. I think that was kind of the joke.
Probably the phase doesn't really go down to that setting. But my other concern was, why did they go, when they went to the turbo lift, why do they go with phaser 2s? It's not necessary. Phaser 1s are very, very powerful, especially in that context. It would have been nice to see them use phaser 1s as a nod to canon, because they are separable. We haven't seen them use the phaser 1s yet, have we?
No.
I mean, you've seen more of the episodes than I have.
No.
That would have been a good opportunity to do that.
That would have. That would have for sure. But I'm fine with that. But that's a good point. I do like how Lan does actively do the she clicks up the settings on the piece that it does. It's very subtle, because unless you know that's what she's doing, you wouldn't know. But I really like that because that's what it should be. But then you get quite a fun little actually outside. Wow, shocking. Although you see three people in the background in full uniform still, and I like T'Pring is coming, and Chapel's like, oh god, she's gonna bitch slap me because I messed with her man. It's a fun, like, there's a nice sense of repercussion here, even though it's not the situation. It was a very human sort of moment of, oh, yeah, don't always advice isn't always welcome when you don't even know the other person. But she tells, or he tells her the plot, and Chapel is just having fun with it. You know, wow, you're into Pring's body. That's crazy.
Am I right in thinking they're filming this in Canada?
Yes.
Yeah, because that looks like more like a Canadian lake than a lake you're going to find in Southern California. Are we supposed to make an appeal for some more super chats? Because we haven't had any for a while.
We have one, in fact.
Have we? Oh, James McGill, $1.99. T'Pring is growing on me despite how it ends in TOS. Well, yes, I mean, excellent actress, and she's really running with it. So it would be interesting to see how they shoehorn her into that character. But as I said, it's a soft reboot, so it doesn't really have to end in the way it ends in Amok time, I don't think. So yes, we've got 84 people watching and had 88 likes. I thought that more people would be wanting to watch.
I did too. I guess this week maybe more stuff's happening. Only about 130, 140.
Or so maybe it's just we're actually now seeing Stuart's pulling power. See, sadly, I'm just a poor substitute.
I mean, yeah, but
people tune in for that goatee beard, and that certain je ne sais quoi that the captain has.
Certainly, because we're not even half our minimum yet, and we're already at almost 3/4 of the time, which is really sad because our minimum's there for a reason, and we need at least another $100, and that's, you know, hard to see because this is what I live off for rent. So it's but you know, we'll do it anyway, and hope you guys help us in the long run. As you know, Trekyards coming soon, etc. But then we get the first briefing scene with again use the LED wall, which allows them to have this big escape, and Pike, who's been relegated, we kind of missed that scene, but Pike was told by April that he's out of the meeting. And in fact, the aliens are refusing to talk because they didn't vibe with Pike, which is fun because in the scene it feels like they get on very well. It's a nice juxtaposition.
Well, they did get on very well.
Exactly. But only to Spock, because that obviously was a more truthful potential direction. And when you cut to that, Pike's allowed to be there as a pure observer. And suddenly they're even using Vulcan wordage in their negotiation tactics, and it's a fun little, you know, good for the aliens. They have 4 different acting versions, and then to see T'Pring Spock talk to these aliens is a fun little scene. And Pike's still on point. This show does not feel the need to diminish the quality of one character to raise the other. Everyone can be good. That's really important, and good for them.
I liked his speech to Spock, saying how he is valued, and this is an example of why Starfleet is great. The fact that Spock can be in it, and all these different races can be in it. I mean, it's a very simple statement, but it was, you know, well received.
Yeah, and obviously, even though he knew it was T'Pring,
again, it's kudos to the writers of the series. Really, we've got some quality talent who understand the franchise.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a good little scene.
Even if it's visually different, I mean, tonally, they're getting it almost right for a makeover.
And if only the top production people said, let's make it closer to TOS, even just by reducing the size of things by 30% would have made a difference. But it's interesting to see T'Pring sort of complain about Starfleet, because from her point of view, obviously, she's not a Starfleet fan. She's dealing with it, and to be in it and to see what it means to people is it's a good perspective. It's a good use of everyone's time. And then we get Mamenga in his exterior, he's fishing.
we've got another 2 super chats.
Oh, excellent.
$1 from Squad of Course, no comment, but that's
Thank you.
very much appreciated. And Matt Boardman for $5 says, I find it interesting how quickly this crew feels comfortable to me. Only 5 episodes in, and it feels like I've known them for 5 seasons. Absolutely. I've only seen 3 episodes, right? And I'm thinking that. As I said, if this would have been good as a standalone science fiction series, regardless of whether it was set in the Star Trek universe, because of the good characterizations.
And it's not as if this isn't the same format as Discovery. So it's more of it's not so much this show doing it well, it's an indictment on Discovery not even trying to make good characters. You know what I mean? Or at least having entirely wrong people who thought they were talented.
Making the wrong characters, shall we say, characters that didn't really engage.
And 4 years to improve them, and they barely have. It's a shocking indictment. This has done better in 5 episodes than they have in 4 years.
Because they were making this during COVID as well, so that isn't...
Both teams were... boy.
That's right, you can be Stuart. I'm easy.
Preset to that.
But the way they padded out Discovery Season 4...
Oh yeah, again, radically different in terms of what they achieved here versus
you've got about 3.5 episodes out of content in that thing, probably, if you edited it down. And this, we got 3 distinctive stories, and I've said repeatedly in this episode, they've done things that have never been done in Star Trek before, and that's a pretty amazing achievement considering how many hundreds of hours now we have of on-screen material to come up with some new ideas. That's talent. That's really hard. Like, it's hard for Doctor Who to do that, given how many hours that's been on, to think up so many little things that are original. So, yeah, it's a joy to watch.
Yeah.
And it would be even more joyful to watch if the interiors looked a bit more like...
That's the thing.
Like they did in Enterprise with Into the Mirror Darkly.
Just a bit. But then we cut to a park with Vulcan.
Somewhere in Canada.
Yep, it's kind of fan filmy in a fun way. Lots of Vulcans playing chess. And this is, like I said, what confused me, because if he's a terrorist or a negative factor, why on earth is he on a Federation starbase in the open with other Vulcans chilling out with zero tension applied to the scene? I was assuming, based on how T'Pring's advisor was saying, "Come help me," that you have to warp out and go somewhere and be tension filled, but to walk just to the...
Or it'd be more cloak and dagger. It'd be me behind the bins at the back of the school, whatever.
Yeah, it's so... I don't know the rationale for this. I mean, I suppose Vulcans are so logical that they will not...
How many times have you watched this episode now?
Just one.
I think I have to watch it a second time, because I think we've both missed some contextualization here.
Yeah, we only had time for one today, which was slightly annoying, but it is what it is. But we have 2 more super chats, or 3 more in fact, which is fun. 3 more? Yes, 3 more, which is fantastic. We've now hit half our minimum, guys. So
Trent C. I shall. Kaylee Anderson. I'm not sure if it's the fact that some characters are rolled over, but it's telling that I know more of SNW crew names than after 4 seasons of Disco.
Okay. Guys, in the chat right now, type out all the names of the Stranger Worlds crew.
All right.
Stranger Worlds crew. Right now, speed round, go. Let's see how many, without Googling it, how many can you name? And obviously we'll let them do that. Because I would assume, I mean, obviously I review it in a way that means I have to learn them. But I don't know all the ones in Discovery. Like, I still can't remember which one's Bryce, which one's Reese. Bryce is the black guy, Reese is the Asian guy, I think. That's not a good sign. It's been 4 years and I can barely get... I think I've got that right. And I'm not faking that. I've met both of them. And the Asian guy knew Trekyards and liked us. He was lovely. I'm gonna get myself...
Yeah, hopefully they're not watching this, because sometimes actors can get a bit prissy if you can't remember the characters' names.
Well, yes, but he also knows the limited amount of work he did. I mean, when you have less than 100 lines in your 5 years, I mean, actors are self-aware a lot of the time. He knows he's a guest player in a guest show, etc.
I remember having dinner with an actor once after a theatre run had finished, and I actually pointed out that I saw the play and his character's name wasn't mentioned once in it, as far as I could see.
Okay.
And he got quite upset about that, and I said, "Well, when was it mentioned?" And he couldn't remember when it was mentioned. Obviously, the character's name is in the program, and he performed a very good role. But no one ever referred to him by that name. So
That's funny.
So I shall read out the next one, shall I?
Please
Trent
do.
C. When I saw Mabenga in the hat, I immediately thought of MASH, which was also about military doctors. He looked better in the hat when he was actually fishing than he did in the transport room. But that was the idea, wasn't it?
That was it. But it's nice they made the effort to go get him onto a lake and film that.
The same lake they were filming everyone
else.
Yes,
absolutely.
Just outside of Toronto.
100%.
Let's go and Google Earth map it, whatever. We'll find out which lake it is.
100%. I'm just trying to find the selfie because he's actually a rather nice fellow. I mean, they're all nice, but he was a good chat. Where is his face? Well, it's not everyone that can pull up a selfie with one of the actors from the show, is it? Where is he?
It's a while back now, isn't it?
It is.
2019.
It was a while ago. That was a whirlwind of Vegas. So many pictures.
Yep.
I mean, take as many as you can is always the idea. I was on the first day. Oh, yes, my Nichelle Nichols print. That's very important to me. Oh my goodness. How many things did we do this trip? God damn it. Oh my god, no. Just read the chat. I want to find this to prove I did it. Keep in the chat.
I'll try and find some other ones. KK says it surprised me when Ethan Peck teared up a little bit as to T'Pring and the negotiation table. Maybe that was the physics half human, half Vulcan side coming through.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that subtext coming through for sure.
And Thomas Hill says, I know them all. Wow. I am bad with names. And he still knows them all. And yes, we have another super chat. Thank you, Matthew de Freitas. Thank you.
Classic friend.
Fun fact. Took my friend to see TMP, Director's Edition in theatres. Has never seen Star Trek before. He said he really enjoyed it. I was shocked. I would like to see the new version in the cinema.
We would have, if it was able to.
Well, as I said, we could...
there he is.
Cool.
That's a really good photo as well, with our expressions. See? Proof! He knew Trekyards, he liked our reviews.
What we said is if we could go online and we could rustle up 300 people, we could just and they all paid for it. We could probably hire a cinema to do it in. You can book a cinema.
You can.
If you get 300 people, something like that, privately.
Or just can afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's got to be 300 people in Britain who want to see it.
Yeah, although with COVID rules, I'm sure there's a larger chain of events.
All those rules are relaxing, aren't they? So people are getting much more.
True, but private booking is a little bit different. But yeah, anyway, so T'Pring, it goes after him. And I do like the conversation. They're trying to out-logic each other because perspective is important with logic because you can see chains of thought. Well, Isaac, hey, from yesterday, his logic was suicide despite there being another path with a different form of logic. Actually, it's interesting that kind of ties in. And so they kind of logic themselves until Spock just punches him.
Yeah, it was... He learnt that maneuver from Chapel.
Quite possibly.
I think that was probably the foreshadowing as well. She hit him.
Possibly.
To make him real. She said, "I hit you to make you something," wasn't it?
Sure.
Change perspective or whatever.
Okay.
And so he saw that's a logical tool to make this guy who's emotional because he's not following logic would respond to that interaction better than a logical interaction. But it did break his word a bit because there is trust involved here, even if you're dealing with quote-unquote criminals. If your word is not your bond, then you cannot be a negotiator. So the fact that they did this and took him into custody against his will meant they broke the terms, must have broken the terms of their meeting. So that, in a sense, would have been a negative if it was her doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not bound in the same way because he's not really T'Pring.
Yeah, if all he had to do was bring him in, just stun him. If the criterion was just to come in, it was a... But the fact the scene included the really, really important textual knowledge of the Spock racism, that's the way of saying it, or speciesism, which we've had very much so in JJ handled not overly well. This was interesting to revisit that in a more mature way of, I mean, and you don't think about this. This is why it's such an important scene. It's nothing about the scene. It's about what they say in the scene. Is that T'Pring, betrothed to Spock from a young age. Okay, no choice. But if even 20% of the population of Vulcan look down upon her union with a half human, then she is sacrificing something to marry him as well, which you never think going in. She's not having the pure.
That's a good thought. I hadn't thought about that. It's not just about him being half human. She's guilty by association. I never really thought about that.
And therefore their children, quarter, etc.
Even in TOS, I hadn't really thought about that. A full-blooded Vulcan. That was a pretty. That could have been a reason why she wasn't keen on it. I wanted to marry Ston, who was fully Vulcan, who we've also met. Got his autobiography.
Yeah.
And we got another super chat. From Chris. He says SNW and pick equals 10 episodes a season.
Mm-hmm.
Disco equals 13 episodes a season. Thoughts?
Well, that was because Netflix ordered 13. Because originally they had 10, and then they butchered season 1 so much, for many reasons outside their control, they had to order 3 more just to finish the storyline, and then they continued the order for 2 more seasons, and then when Netflix was out of the picture entirely, they went back to 10 as they would have wanted to. So that was purely just because 10 was the idea originally, but then it all shifted with Netflix, etc. But good question. So yeah, I just think it's really, really deepens the T'Pring stuff and makes Spock realise that he's because he's quite self-absorbed, let's be honest. You know, not in a bad way necessarily, just he thinks about himself in his own context, but T'Pring is giving up a lot to be with him, and the fact that even at the end, and I was skipping to the end a little bit, I was wondering if she would lessen her intentions, but she's still committed despite knowing the damage to her potential reputation to a certain small subset is interesting, and she's still fully committed. It's a really powerful little sequence, I think.
Now, I thought Vulcans could only mate once every 7 years, which is when that urge overcomes them to mate.
No, they have to mate every 7 years. They can mate whenever they want, but it's not a biological urge.
Right, okay, because he's pretty much at it.
That's what DC Fontana said in a later book.
Okay.
Like in 2 years later after the show ended. It's just one's imperative, one's it's not like Kess where she has to, otherwise she'll die. But anyway, back on the station, we get a relatively
dark looking.
Yes.
We hardly see.
We get a relatively easy wrap up, as you said. It's just some alien root, Dr. Phlox, and some crystals, and they do it. It's pretty easy. It's kind of odd in its structure slightly, and there's really nothing to say about it. Really, it's.
Well, they screamed quite loudly.
It did. They did.
So it must have hurt a bit.
A bit, and it cuts back.
And that's when he had said about their emotional state made it more whatever. But it's got. I mean, probably hinting at his emotional state because he's half human, and that was a different factor in this.
She was pissed at him. I think both, because Vulcans are emotional. So.
Well, he can be more emotional.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
But also, that's the whole point. With your loved one, it'd be more emotional than your standard. So she is very emotional for him down below as Vulcans are.
Vulcans have been mating and being involved with each other for thousands of years, so this should have happened more often if that was just it. I mean, the fact that's different this time is he is half human.
Yeah.
And he had that powerful dream where he fought himself. If you're thinking about it that much, you're actually creating these images in your head. You can imagine that level of preoccupation.
Yeah, no, that's fair. We don't know it's never happened before though, but it's a pretty specific circumstance. Although entirely biological, there's no tech that was involved.
She's had such a powerful presence in these early episodes. We were halfway through. I guess it's 10 already.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It looks like she's going to be in this all the way, don't you think?
Well, she's only in the first and this one.
Okay.
Just the ones you happen to have seen. This was her grand return.
Oh, right.
But very good, isn't it? The next scene, though, is Spock's fine, and he's definitely more emotional in the scene, clearly coming down from the, brain zap, but definitely, on a different level of a lot of eyebrow work and softer spoken. I was, again, wondering if Chapel would kind of express more of a oomph to him, but she very genuinely is on his side here, saying, decide what you want, be truthful, And he's like, yes, I will to her. And she's like, no, to yourself. Because you might be out of obligation. I thought that was a very powerful little moment. Where I'm very glad then that they're friend zoned. Otherwise,
Well,
that would have hurt the
it's
subtext,
friends
I think.
and also professional, because she would have taken basic,
Sure.
even though she may have chosen to specialize in an area of medicine. As part of training medicine, you actually have to study all sorts of different areas to work out what you want to specialize in. So she would have had some background in counseling and psychology. But again, it's often the case that because that caring bond that develops between physicians and patients, that can develop into romance. It's not unknown, as you know. So
yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it as well.
It's interesting to say we're seeing the very beginnings of the Chapel infatuation with Spock. We never knew quite where it came from, except that he was unattainable, and she seemed to be attracted to unattainable men, such as Dr. Roger Corby, whatever his name was. He was unattainable because he went off to another planet. So she doesn't want to. She wants to commit to people she doesn't have to commit to because they're not actually there. So she doesn't have to deal with the relationships on a day-to-day basis. She's in a relationship, but sufficiently distant so she doesn't have to deal with the problems of day-to-day. And Spock has that attraction being unemotional. But now they're giving us perhaps the origins of where that relationship began, which is like her being a friend and counselling. Because in the end, we know the relationship's not supposed to be going somewhere, and although he's not supposed to be emotional, their relationship when it ends should be quite impactful on him. Although in Amok time, he just brushed it off. The fever's gone. I'm not interested in women anymore.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky.
But now, knowing all this backstory, you're thinking, that doesn't sound. They had a lot going on, didn't they? That would be really quite cutting for her to pick someone else.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it. I'm enjoying the story. So
well, I mean, like we said, with 8 years of growth, I mean, they clearly didn't. They were still betrothed 8 years later. I mean, an 8-year engagement in our culture is like, well, I mean, you're not getting married, are you, at that point?
And it also makes you wonder, the images we saw of her in TOS, the original series, was T'Pring when she was 7. We never saw, until they actually got to Vulcan, we actually saw the woman. Why would he be choosing to look at an image of a girl he was betrothed to when she's 7, when he obviously has more contemporary images of what she looks like now? Obviously, it's because they wrote the series in the 60s and they're writing the series in 60 years later. That's why. But obviously, there is a bit of a disconnect there. Otherwise, it's a bit. What's the word? It's a bit questionable. Him looking at a 7-year-old girl and finding that's the image he's choosing of his partner.
Well, I would, yes, although I'd probably say that's how he remembers her being innocently loving, because all the drama happens between them makes it so hard to look at her now, would be my assumption.
Well, I'm still sure there'll be images when she was a teenager when it was still good.
Why they didn't know each other because he went off to Starfleet and such. I mean, you go to Starfleet Academy at 18. I mean, maybe, but I got the sense that he never really knew her until he sort of, they weren't family friends. I think they were family separate. Was what I always got from T'Pring. But that's obviously TOS versus this is very different, as you say.
So you got a spin-off series here, haven't you? Really, Spock and her, their romance. You could just follow that story, couldn't you?
I mean, that's what this episode was. And
Pike makes 3.
The odd couple and Pike.
Yes.
But then we get to the crew quarters, and I didn't know where the scene was going to go. I really was left in a lurch of, are they going to break up? Is it going to... Because they're 2 good episodes. It would be a fine thing for them to do. And how on earth they're going to act it. I thought they both did a very, very good job saying, this is the time to leave or stay. And he's like, I want this. And she's like, I want it too. And they both did it in such different yet unique ways. Yeah, very tactful. I'd love to see how many takes they took for this. Especially when you have a master like this, that they might have only had to do, the wide. I don't think there are any close-ups necessarily.
Well, yes, when you're filming, you easily do at least 5 or 10 times to get, and you ask for slightly different nuances each time.
I try not to go more than 3. In fairness, I try and be quite. But
or maybe it's just when you're filming me.
We have less lines, so I can focus on getting the right one. In fairness, but we have
again,
a couple.
I thought it was very well done. It's incredible.
And I've said this so many times. This was what I was least looking forward to from the trailers, and it's the thing I'm probably most enjoying there's now 2 full episodes, so it's the biggest storyline. But that's so impactful for them to completely overturn it. But 3 super chats though, starting with Snoopy.
3?
Yes.
And we've also got a poll to read out.
Yes.
Lots of. So, Snoopy McQueen, is that the first one? Keep it up, he says, having donated kindly $5.
The pair.
And Kaylee Anderson, £2. So that sounds like she's in the UK. Chapel and Spock, nah. Chapel and Ortega, yes.
I mean, that is the last scene, and I will say that felt like a genuine, like, gentle chemistry. If they want to go that route, I wouldn't be against it. They did throw in a line there at right at the start where she did mention that Chapel dated a girl and it didn't go well. So they left that door open, and I think they had a nice, gentle chemistry that, yeah.
Well, I would say, if nothing, Chapel will be bi, really. Probably.
That's what they said, yeah. That's what she implies.
She comes across as being very experimental, and her hairstyle and whatever is very what you would expect in a modern iteration of that. And Chuck Jones says $5 and no comment, as far as I can see.
There is. He said, was kissing between Vulcan seen on screen before this series?
No, not that I can remember, unless I did it in Enterprise. The closest you got was actually running fingers down each other's fingers, which was quite erotic the way they did it. So less is more.
I mean, to poll kiss Trip, but that again is contextually different. And JJ Spock kiss JJ Uhura, which again is they don't give a shit about that stuff. So it's no. I know some people really disagree with it, and I one of the show, I think it was the Picard show, and I sort of came back on Twitter and said, "Come on, guys, do you really think they never did that? We'll remove that from their entire society. All we can do is touch fingers, which is the most erotic thing you can do. But do you think they wouldn't do any of the other stuff? What do you think? Should it be limited to the classical touch, or is
I quite liked it because it was a kiss, but it was restrained. It was like a polite societal kiss. It's the sort of kiss you imagine prim and proper Victorians having, who's not supposed to show their emotions in public. So
but they're in private. That's the point.
And what I'm saying is, this is a very difficult, delicate subject to handle, given the massive canon backstory, blah blah blah, and I think they did very well. I didn't think they moved out of the space. Wasn't required to suspend my disbelief. I enjoyed seeing this interaction between the exploration of the interaction between paired Vulcans, which you've never really seen like this before.
See, that's why it's fascinating, because it's in the.
That's what Spock would say.
I know.
Spock would say it's fascinating.
It is, and in Discovery they do a lot of things poorly writing wise, but this they're doing very well. I think if this was in public kissing, I would not buy it at all. But they're alone. They're in their locked quarters in designated romance times, so it is a different context. But we know that it was in the novels, and again the original people mentioned that the Vulcans have sensory nerve endings, special ones in their fingers, so that is one of the erogenous zones. Because it's sensory. It's not necessarily in the same way we think of erogenous, but it's a sensitive zone.
It's still erogenous for human beings as well, because our fingers and our tongue, whatever, got the most nerve endings.
Sure, but for Vulcans,
it's outside of the genitals.
It's extra such, similar with the Ferengi with Amok to a certain extent. But I'm fine with kissing. It's the way they've done it is fine so far.
It was restrained Vulcan style kissing.
Yes,
it's a bit like touching fingers with your lips.
I would like to see, I think, going forward, both at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like show the Vulcan intimacy with with behind closed doors private intimacy, showing that they're connecting on both places. That's me. But again,
I may be reading too much into this, but Ethan Peck, I really feel he's invested in this character.
Oh, that I would agree with.
That he actually tries to. He's watched all the things to do with Vulcan. He's read all the things he can do with Vulcan. He is obviously receiving direction. He's being guided, but I think he's internalized what a Vulcan is, and he has his own independent, idea of what it is that he can operate with. He's not being told how to do it. He knows what he thinks Vulcan should be like. Do you know what I mean? He's not just an actor playing a role. He's tried to internalize it, so he is a Vulcan.
Well, I think fundamentally most people can't play a Vulcan. It's a very tricky thing to play. And so the fact that it is a combination of luck and everything else. So he happens to have that something. And he happens to be put into the most iconic Vulcan role who can play both sides. And I was also worried going in with the... Will he go down the same rabbit hole of always fighting his human side and his emotion side? They're not doing it so far. It's balanced. Thank goodness.
Well, that's why, again, I said I would love him really to have been his own character who was Vulcan, half human or half something, because he's brought so much to this role that I'd like him to have the kudos for not being Spock, but creating a new character, which we all think of as being iconic. Because the way he's going, you can imagine he could have created another iconic Star Trek character. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Right, I see.
But because he's tied up with being Spock, he's always going to be slightly in that shadow rather than if he was some other name, but Spark or Spick or something, whatever you want to call him.
Or Spark with 3 O's.
But we have some more super chats.
We do.
Do you want to read them out or shall I read them out?
You can.
I think Trent C.
Yep.
Canadian $5, so that suggests he's in Canada. The T'Pring actress was very good at letting Spock know she was not happy with him without using emotions. Exactly. She was disappointed, which is one of the worst things you can be if you're at the end of, if you're a Vulcan, another Vulcan being disappointed at you, because you know that's pretty serious. Because they don't get angry, they don't get upset, they get disappointed. And Jess Harvey,
it is therefore logical for you to sleep on the couch.
And Jess Harvey, $5. In terms of light-hearted downtime episodes, this episode gave me as much fun and enjoyment I've had since DS9, grinning from start to finish. Yep.
And I said to Stuart earlier, I would easily say I prefer this to the Orville yesterday. Obviously, much more serious, but that rarely happened when we had the Discovery versus Orville battle. And this was such a fresh episode compared to Orville. It had its own story, it had its own sub-stories, it was tightly paced, it was well acted. You know, I'm shocked that people now seeing the 65% from yesterday, this is clearly to me a better episode, like not even a question of comparing the two, personally.
It's a more enjoyable episode in different ways. The Orville episode had a very serious undertone with sadness in it. This one was almost all joy and had comedy in it, and it was just great entertainment. Very difficult to find. No, you can't really find fault with it because it's an excellent piece of television. We're just having to,
which is shocking for this.
Well done to them.
And we call out this stuff. You know, each episode we call it as it is. You know, the first one's phenomenal, second one some problems, third one a few niggles, the last one some more problems. This one is glowing. It's.
Yeah, I'll have to catch up with the other episodes now, won't I?
Yeah. But then we get back to the meeting room. Just a final statement because Pike managed to get that back on the table, and they just say hello, and Pike gives a very, very fascinating statement in kind of one take zoom in, where he says, "You know what? All things considered, maybe we shouldn't join the Federation because fundamentally, what
can we ally with the Federation, not join. It wasn't about joining.
Sure, yes, yeah.
Ally with.
You know, because as soon as you ally with us, you're an enemy of the Klingons, and you might want our tech, but that might help in the future." It was a really, really adult, interesting list of things that does put into perspective that unless there's a reason to join, there are all these other things to consider that you've never, ever really put down on paper before. So I think that was a bold move, and also the payoff being is that they want the honesty, but also the empathy that goes with honesty, because he sees their point of view, he's reflecting it back at them, and
it's doing what they do as a species.
Yeah.
And again, because this is a TV series, so these are, in a sense, real people thinking these real thoughts. Writers had to think this up. And well done. Yep. When it's delivered, it seems the most natural, authoritative. Absolutely, a captain of this standard would do this. But there are no Starfleet captains in real life, so someone had to think this up and make it credible. And that's all the more impressive. Mm-hmm. And of course, Anson Mount's delivery is just impeccable.
Yeah. He's doing well.
It does feel a bit strange not having things to complain about, Samuel.
Yeah, it's
Makes the channel boring. We were just saying nice things. Do something really bad so we can complain.
I just you call it the good and the bad, man. It's just we only can do what we were given, etc. But what did you think of his list?
It was
And
just, again, it was perfect. It was, again, well, credible and well thought out. I can't fault it.
hmm.
But I understood why he was doing it, because I picked up on the thing there, empaths, which is like they can read thoughts, so not thoughts or feelings. So I understood that early on why he was doing it.
Hmm.
But he's coming across as one of these captains who's naturally a captain.
Mm.
Didn't have to train him. It's just this ease of lovely command style.
Yeah.
It's imagine that you imagine a captain of an aircraft carrier might be, which is like the comparable
Uh,
complement.
Too friendly though, I'd say.
Well, no, you do get them like this.
Hmm.
Who are very, very self-confident in
Oh, bye,
their
Thomas.
charisma.
Uh,
Yeah, NZ Fade says, after 4 years of discovery, I'm happy to not have anything bad about the show. Yes.
and I'd call out the bad cinematography or the bad pacing, and it is shockingly put together. But yes, the speech happens. Then we get a very sort of the extra on top of the extra, having an entire spacewalk sequence, which you kind of assume might be like a weird holodeck potentially, but it's real. Or the LED wall makes it even easier because they're just standing as basically a green screen, just not a green screen. And there they are on the edge of the Enterprise. Boom! But they've got a force field, which me and Stuart both said earlier today is that the ensigns have to sneak out in a spacesuit. That's the only way they can get to the hull. But these people are the rank structure, so they can give an order to the bridge to put a force field on the hull so they can walk out. They're never going to allow this to anyone else because it's stupid, but they are the ones in command. So that's why you would never see this normally because it's such an obscene thing to do. But they can abuse their own power and do this. So it's kind of it's such a unique moment because of those very things.
I'm wondering how they get oxygen. It's all right to create a force field to keep atmosphere in. So, are there vents in the hull that
Well,
can
no, I assume they just beam in oxygen with them, and so they have a certain amount. They've got like a
are they
10 minute.
beamed in?
I would assume so. I don't know why you'd walk.
They missed that. They didn't actually show us how they got there, did they?
I assumed they'd walk. I mean, it'd be much easier because you can create.
But I did love this scene because, again, it's something that's never appeared in Star Trek when they actually went down on the panel and signed it. But someone else pointed out earlier on in the super chat, wasn't this one of the first parts of the Enterprise that was destroyed?
That was Stuart's biggest complaint of the episode. This bit does not exist. This doesn't make any sense. This thing was obliterated 3 months ago. So the oldest player on the ship is only 3 months old from this area. So either they entirely forgot about Discovery, which is very possible, or they took a plate from another part of the ship and put it here for some reason, which seems like a massive stretch. But the oldest plate on the ship of this part is 3 months.
I can imagine because it's in the front of the ship. It's being highlighted by the main lights. It's next to the number. It's in the number, isn't it? That's one of the numbers next to it.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that a C? That's a C, isn't it?
They've noticed that. Oh, that's funny. Huh.
I
think you're right. Yeah.
either between two C's. You can imagine that they would actually put a plate there because that's the sort of place of honor, if you know what I mean, in front of the bridge, in front of the bridge lights, in between in the number. So it's not impossible.
But like I say, the thing was blown up, so it has to be a plate from somewhere else.
But I just love that idea. That's what for me saved that. Didn't need saving, but it made a nice end to their voyage. What they were doing, it was a nice payoff to end there and sign their names, which is such a unique thing. And yeah, if I was given a chance, boy, that's what I would do. I'd sign my name.
You can sign the Enterprise.
Wouldn't that be a dream come true?
Although when the thing's refitted to the 2S Connie again, all the hulls change to gleaming cream, so it's not going to exist.
Well, I'll put the plate somewhere else.
Fair enough. NZ Fade though, the Enterprise's official graffiti. Yeah, and it's the end of the bucket list. Is can you get out the outside the hull? Can you sneak out and sign it and make your mark? And it is cute. It's weird, but it's cute. So I'll give them
but
points.
of course, by signing your actual name, then when they do routine inspections, they'll know who have been the naughtiest people.
Yep.
Who must have done all these other things to
Yeah.
do this. So basically, you, as an ensign or lieutenant, you're saying, not only have I signed the outside of the hull, I've done all the other 9 things on this list. I'm
Yeah.
admitting to it. So,
To
yeah,
wit,
what are you going to do about this?
one of them is also a bit insane. It's through the tribble, which actually also breaks a bit of the logic.
Tribble?
Because the list was released online publicly.
All right.
So I read that out in the review. Go check that out. So number 7 is sneak a tribble into the transporter buffer. Thing is, Uhura, as a cadet, she would have become ensign on the Enterprise. She would have done this list, so she'd know what a tribble was. Unless this list was obviously stopped. And then, which doesn't make sense for Cyrano Jones, doesn't know what a tribble is. So if literally all the ensigns know what tribble are, why the hell does she not know what tribble is at lieutenant? So
no one at Starfleet knew what a tribble was.
No. Yeah, Scotty didn't, Kirk didn't, Spock
Because
didn't.
it just been to the planet to pick them up or something. He had just discovered them himself.
Yeah. But thing is, do you take a list like this as true canon when you have to click, zoom in, barely read it? You know, they're fun ideas.
Well, what you would say is that they are making loving use of the canon and the franchise. They're not making up something new. They're using things that we love.
But
it's a trade-off, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Number 8 is sit in the captain's chair, which you would think would be a very quick and easy thing to do.
Except there's always British people there, and you have to have special permissions to be on the bridge.
Yeah.
You can't just walk onto the bridge, so it's actually quite difficult.
I don't know if that's true in this era. We know in TNG it is, but they've never talked about that in this era. But what I think makes the scene really pop, because it's a fine, it's an okay scene, is that this scene from the trailer, which we assumed based on the vibe was they walk on, they're on like a planetary scape and they see this ship come up. But these aliens decide, yes, we'll take the Federation at their word, we'll agree to join them. The flags come up, it's a nice moment, and they fly over the hull and they see it, and 9.5 times out of 10 you're experiencing the stellar universe via a display, a view screen, or a monitor. So for them, being able to really seeing this with their own eyes, that is like going to a planet and breathing real air, not replicated. It's really seeing.
Well, that's what I said about the grandeur of space that Orville gave us something of yesterday, and what other people have said is the thing about TMP, the original motion picture. It was not about lots and lots of action. It was about the grandeur of exploring space, and that scene captured some of that dream that's in the original motion picture. That this is a wonderful thing we're doing. We're seeing beautiful things. We're not all wrapped up in tin cans going at each other's throats because we've still got all the 20th century hang-ups which made life in the 21st century so bad and resulted in the Third World War. We've got beyond that. We're now out there doing positive things. So it was a nice touch. And that's the point where I teared up, was when they raised the United Federation of Planets flag on their ship. That really meant a lot to me.
I would admit, I also, for some reason, it hit me in a nerve, and I said to Marie, and what I said, and she was like, "Oh, are you crying?" I'm like, "Nope," but it was emotional. Something about that, it really threw me for I'm not sure why exactly.
Well, because the United Federation of Planets is a wonderful idea.
But it was such a small. Yeah, it was a weird trigger.
Well, it's the same thing in Discovery when we saw that space station, relay station, and he unveiled the flag. That had the same impact on me. That was one of the most impactful moments.
And guys, we're also only $50 away from our minimum, 50. So 10 5s, we are there. 220s are basically there. We're coming near the end now, guys. We really want to hit our minimum on our important Fridays, because it's kind of really sad if we don't, because channel really can't keep going if we don't get that, because it's a minimum for a reason. So help us out if you can. But no, it was a lovely little end. The fact they joined, the fact they accepted Pike's rational, or at least allied, and set this flag up, as in, because also the whole ship's a flag in a sense, and this rather beautiful thing comes out, does its thing. It's a genuinely sweet moment, as we said. It works. It works really well, and then it cuts to Spock and to Pring finally having bedded, having pre-consummated, because they were abruptly stopped last time. And then back at the bar, or no, the restaurant with the two ladies talking about relationships and why not, why yes. But there is a certain chemistry there which definitely came across, and she kind of basically sort of ends the episode with a, well, no, I can't be doing this. This is like it gets kind of dark for those last few seconds. So definitely that's going to be her arc, and clearly her bubbliness is to cover for her feelings, and even her taking the assignment maybe to get out is to leave her life as was. So yeah, interesting ending, and certainly left me on excited for next week.
Well, that's why it's episodic, but it does have underlying arc to it. So.
Multiple, yeah. Now we do actually have though a special guest. In fact, it's called planning. We did go ahead and record Stuart a video insert before we give our final.
We got 2 super chats as well.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Both from Jess Harvey.
Oh, that's very kind.
Which is keep it up, and keep it up. So that's really nice. That's $10 towards your minimum.
Yeah, getting close. That's very. I asked, you answered. That's very kind.
Maybe if they see Stuart's face, they'll be inspired to hand out more.
I mean, I'm sure when Stuart watches this, he'll be like, "Oh, you guys."
Doing his Bob Geldof impression. Give us your money. Give us your money.
Give
us your money now.
Got to add the A at the end. Now let's see. We'll be able to hear this.
Hey guys, Captain.
Okay, cool. Okay, it's gonna work. So we're gonna pop out for a second, and because we can still hear you, Dad's just you have to be silent for 4 minutes. Apologies, that you're on the same audio track. But I'll mute myself. So this will be Stuart's reaction to the video. Then we'll give our final thoughts. He has a score. We'll have our scores as well, which means you get to add an official score to the chart. I'll write that in everything. Very official. We are only now $35 away from our
because Matt Boardman just thrown in another $5, filling in my Enterprise bingo square. We should add that. You should hack that list online. Get some, computer programmers. Get them to hack that list and add number 7. Give Trekyards $10.
Oh, wow, that would be a thing. That would be a thing.
It could be done. It could be done.
Well, actually, I'll do another poll before we end out because we're 134 votes. I'm loving this result, actually. Does the Freaky Friday style body swap work in Trek? 73% yes, which is a hell of a margin. 18% neither, don't mind either way, and only 9% no. That is an extremely strong go-round, so good job, Strange New Worlds. And we'll do one more brief poll if you want to just vamp briefly about anything in the episode, just for a sec, anything that may have stuck out to you. Briefly.
Just keep saying how good it is. It's just a complete pleasure to watch, and I am definitely going to watch this one again. And looking forward to the rest of the series. And they've learnt from the other iterations of this new Trek, for sure. But it would have been great if they could have started off with this, 4 or 5 years ago, straight out the gate. We would have been such happy bunnies. Yeah. So again, liked the use of classic music and would invite them to use more of that in the future because it really strikes a chord.
Okay, so also this last poll, just because these are 3 that I think the audience like the most, so I'm throwing it in as which do you prefer out of episode 1, which was the first contact episode with Pike, episode 4, the last one was the Gorn episode, and all this episode. So out of these 3, which I think the audience really enjoyed specifically, which do you enjoy? Please vote. Really want to know your thoughts here, because I know, like I said, these were the 3 front runners, I believe. So vote.
And there's another super chat from Squadron Course.
Yes.
And he's saying, great chat. Thanks for hanging out with us. Well, thank you for thanking us for hanging out.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed it. Sometimes when I have these chats with Samuel, I enjoy them too much. I forget there's other people watching, and that we're supposed to try and generate some revenue for the tube, the channel, because we're just really enjoying having a chat about a franchise that means so much to both of us.
Indeed. And thank you for jumping in when Stuart is away, because you're not always available, especially these sorts. In fairness, Fridays especially recently, so it's very nice you're able to be around.
Yeah, I could have been in Germany, but now I'm here. And next, oh, there's that handsome young man joining us.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, like I said, thank you for jumping in. It's much more fun as a duo. I don't particularly enjoy by myself because it's
It's hard work when it's just yourself.
I mean, when the chat's like 200 people, it's very vibrant. That's fine. But if you guys aren't saying stuff, then I can't react to anything, and I say all my points and be done. So I like the bouncing. So yes, I'm gonna mute myself. You just don't say anything for 4 minutes, and we'll read out. This will be Stuart's reaction. Then we'll give our final scores as well. And guys, like I said, the final $32. We're real close, guys. So $5 for Stuart as he returns from the abroad. So let's see what he had to say.
Hey guys, Captain Foley live from Wonderfest in Louisville, Kentucky. Well, actually, I'm not live like while you guys are watching this live, but I am recording this for you guys. I just want to do a quick recap. I absolutely love this episode. I thought it was really fun. If you haven't watched our edited review, please go check that out because I got more deep and interesting thoughts in there. But just a fun, lighthearted episode. Really made me appreciate Lon more and number one. The Spock and Spring thing was interestingly done as well. It felt very rom-com-y. It felt very 80s kind of body swap movie, but it worked really well. I think they did a fine job with it. And Anson Mount as Pike was awesome in this episode. As for the main story with the aliens, I thought that was very well handled as well. And I love seeing another Solar Sailor. I call it the Solar Sailor Dreadnought just because it's so much bigger than the last one we saw. But as for my score, this is one of the better ones for sure. I am going to give this one probably a surprising 9.6 out of 10, I think, because it is quite an interesting take on Trek. And I love the lighthearted episodes of Trek. I really do. And we've had some really, serious ones. And that's kind of the way it goes. You do a serious one, you get a really lighthearted one. The next one's probably going to be serious again. So just enjoy it while you can. It's just the characters being the characters and being human, or Vulcan. But anyway, it was very well done. So thank you guys for watching Samuel and his dad do a live review of this. And I'm glad I could pop in just to say hi. And I'll be back to normal next week, I'm sure. So anyway, until next time, I'm Captain Foley, signing off. Bye, everybody.
So there you go. He jumped in there for the last little bit. Keep voting the poll. Like I say, last $32 if you can. And we've got our final thoughts. But yes, Stuart gave a rather high mark. But I'll give my final closing. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think it was a episode that structure helped tremendously. Its potential less shortcomings. And yes, guys, put your scores now as well. I forgot to mention that. Put your score out of 10 now for both Super Chat scores. We'll read them out, or Dad will read them out, and I'll read out non-Super Chat scores. But we all know what you guys think. We heard Stuart's score. So put in your score right now in the chat. Let us know if you can Super Chat those last 32 or 33.
It's time for some super sniping, really. We got some good snipers in the team, haven't we?
We are getting right there, yeah. Like I say, all the characters were served except the engineer, who was not there at all. That's okay. Hura didn't get a single line, I don't think, but was there in many scenes, and that's okay. She still had a presence. Una was developed, certainly. Lana was developed, certainly. Pike was ever good. Spock was a very good performance. And again, the T'Pring just really shone this week. And the fact they had an intro TOS scene was a really big plus to them. It was a surprisingly good episode. Now, while I think it's sort of... You didn't need the Star Trek coat. You could have had any or many sci-fis with two characters and do a body swap. The Star Trek kind of added to that, but it being so not reliant on the Star Trek brand helped in a way as well. It was a good by itself episode. Didn't necessarily have all the extra hallmarks necessarily, but it had enough. Score-wise, I did think Stuart was incredibly generous at 9.6. That is very high. I did say I think it was my favorite. Well, my favorite of the season does not mean the one I think is the best Star Trek episode. I'm obviously staring at my scores, which means I'm a bit more biased on what I'm going to say. I think for me though, I'm going to give it a 8.9 out of 10. I can't go as high as a 9. because I just reasons, but potentially after the season maybe it'll go up to a 9 based on the other scores. I tend to, a few have a bit of, well, we'll see. But 8.9 I think is very fair. It's the, plenty high, and for any Trek show would be, any TNG episode would be thrilled to have an 8.9 from me. So good job. I'd like to keep those super chat scores coming in. We're very close right now. Vote in the poll, and your final thoughts then, and give us a score.
Well, we've got a couple of super chats which I'll read out
Okay.
first. We've got another one from Matt Boardman, which is very generous of you, Matt. Thanks a lot. $2. Snipe! Exclamation mark. And then of course Squadron Course comes in almost 1 nanosecond later and puts in $1. So he has technically sniped him, but it's lesser amounts, you see. So if you go by amounts and who's actually done the sniping.
Well, I often joke about the sniper amounts is like a bullet versus a machine gun, like a big round versus a rocket. If you throw a rocket, you've really sniped. Sniper the rocket launcher is a hell of a snipe.
So in terms of my score,
well, final thoughts first.
Final thoughts are all the thoughts I've said all the way through.
Fair enough.
Having been away, time traveling, literally, to the Roman period, to come back to this episode after the first one I've seen is such a strong second episode for me. I don't know what the ones are in between. There were so many new things in this episode that I've not seen in Trek before. That's got to score points for the originality, and they weren't forced. They were genuinely interesting. The way they handled a male-female Vulcan relationship, which we've not seen on screen for this long, this amount of detail, was just simply brilliant. It was convincing, compelling. The dialogue, how it was restrained, they're getting their thoughts across, disappointments across, sparring with each other logically. Even the kiss seemed perfectly correct under the circumstances. So I've said several times that if we're going by this performance alone, Ethan has created a very strong characterization, which I would have liked to have seen him have his own character name and it be his own thing entirely, so he gets full kudos for it. Because this performance doesn't need for him to piggyback on being Spock, really. Yes, so really stoked to see more episodes. I'm going to mark this episode down from what I would otherwise mark it, being gushy, because I'm optimistic and hopeful that they're going to have even better episodes. So I don't want to end up giving my maximum score so early on, and that will be something that will be subject to reviewing the whole series. But I'm still going to score it quite high. I'm going to resist scoring it as high as Stuart. I'm going to say 9.2. Because I want to have a few points that I can actually add to others. But for me, the opening puts it a league above anything else I've seen. That rendition of Vulcan and that dream sequence
was on point, yeah.
Just elevates this whole episode. And I would just be grateful to SN Strange New Worlds just for producing that. Just showing they can produce that. Because that was a lovely segment of it's almost old Trek inserted into new Trek, if you know what I mean. So it's like, and we haven't really seen old Trek since Into the Mirror Darkly, and to see something like that, which it could quite comfortably have sat in my period of time, being old fogey of the original series, was just a gift to know they can do it. And I'd like to see more. I'd like them to use more of the original music, because the original music is so iconic. There's other opportunities to do that. I don't know why the theme tune is so off. There could have been more original music in the theme tune to make it more canon, but no. What can you say when it's so good? I mean, you can't. It's difficult to. You only can say it's so good so many times. The casting. There is a skill to casting, as you know, and they've done so well with their casting with these characters, and the writers. Well, hats off to the dialogue they're coming up with. Very mature, very adult, very thought through, very referential.
Yep.
When it works, it works. it is, in a sense, it is rocket science because it is quite a skill, but obviously it can be done, and they're showing that. So
exactly. And guys, we're only $15 away from our minimum. That's so close.
it is so
1.5. It's right there. And 4 more likes will hit 130. But $15, that is
well,
right
if it was a drunk
there.
lives, would say, well, we'll do a strip tease or something like that. If I do a strip tease, we'll do like $50 or something.
Oh,
It's like radical.
something radical. But Snoopy McQueen does have 5, saying, I love Trekyards, love for Trek. And Admiral Cockins is awesome. No, not Admiral. Ambassador. Tish. But 8 out of 10. And on Friday, £5, says, 9 out of 10. I absolutely love the quiet Chief Kyle is actually a tyrant, feared by low-ranking crew. Burst joke of the episode. Yes, I thought that was funny. He seemed so nice, and that he was mean.
I missed that.
It was a weird, fun joke. I liked that. It was
right.
silly.
Maybe they're making fun. He's not really a tyrant by saying he's a tyrant.
Everything's in context. You throw a young officer with the older people, one thing, and you throw a medium with a much older officer. It's different. So your scores, guys, let's see what you guys think. And like I say, $15, we're right there. You guys said 9.6 out of 10. Oh, that's for Stuart, sorry. 6.5, 9, 9, 9, 8, 8, 9.9, Michael Williams, 9, 10 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9.5. So relatively on the same scorings. I think what made me not give it a 10 or a 9 is a lot because obviously I look for the ship's tech and such, and if they had a bit more of that, because they're not in this, like, this episode can't do it by default. It's not really part of the thematic structure. So one that kind of also harnesses the ships, the tech, the lore more so in a really, really good way will obviously get a higher score from me into those 9s, as well as other styles of things, but that often can do
Have
that.
we actually heard the computer voice yet?
Yes, several times.
Okay. What would have given? I would have given them even more points is if they use a Mark 1 phaser.
That's true. Yeah, that would have been.
Because that would have been so referential.
Or just logical. It'd be
that's the phaser. That's the phaser you use as standard, unless you're in a very difficult situation.
No, very true. That would have been a nice, another nice addition. Because there are episodes where I'm going to be like, that is when I say the Lower Deck season 1 finale or the season 2 finale or the Picard season 1 opener, like when I'm so enthused about them, is when you hit those 9s onwards, that means something. I need to keep that as a metric. But anything in an 8 point anything is very, very good. And they should be very
as I said, I would have scored it higher if I knew what all the other episodes of the season were, so I could compare them.
That's the thing. If this is the best episode of the season, that's a problem, because it's not about strange new or worlds in the main story, nor is it about Pike. Those things have been more integrated for the best episode, etc. But it's certainly top tier for what it's trying to do.
It's strange new worlds in the sense although Vulcan is an established member of the Federation, it's still strange to us. So they are explaining.
You know what I mean, though.
I know, but it's great that, I mean, I was a complete surprise when I heard that music playing and I was working on the computer. I thought, is that coming from Strange New Worlds? I heard in the background, no. Seriously, we're going there? That was just excellent.
Yeah. But last chance, guys. We're at $14, but we really have to go. We went over on this one. But Dad was having fun. And obviously no Stuart to need to go at dinner. But yeah, well done, Stranger Worlds. We look forward to next week. And next week, Orville, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Stranger Worlds. Holy moly.
We are certainly being treated at the moment, aren't we?
And all 3 are good. We don't know what shows after Stranger Worlds. They've not announced that yet. And considering it's only 6 weeks away, that's quite a thing. And there is a new Star Wars show coming not too late after Obi-Wan. So I think it's August, they said. And also Orville's 10. So this is definitely the highlight month. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. I will end the poll. I asked you guys. This is a hard question. Which was your favourite episode of the following? Of episode 1, 4, or 5? And in fact, this episode has the majority at 42% overall.
Yeah, that's the one I voted for.
With the first episode getting the second best at 32% and the Gorn Battle lead 26%. Despite that being people's was thoroughly highly rated, so that's interesting. I put the 3 sort of top ones up.
It's a very, very strong start to a series. This is series 1. So I said, well done for them for learning lessons and producing something that more people want to consume in a positive way. And I only feel slightly sorry now for the also rans, because knowing on a less successful series as an actor does affect you a bit. I mean, you're professional, you move from job to job, it's a paycheck, but knowing, in a sense, well, I was on Discovery. If the writers had written it this way, we could have been just as popular. You know, But anyway, they did improve over time, and Burnham became much nicer. So
yes, and Turd brings up the Star Wars stuff, which we won't talk about. But yes, you know, no place for that. But don't be mean to fans necessarily. Everyone can be a fan in their own way. Just you know, we don't do that stuff here. Cause she's good.
that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, For All Mankind, which I haven't seen, but I know Mike and Denise are working on it.
Yes, £4.20.
I know, we're only $7 away. It's like
For All Mankind starts next week as well.
Now, do we know if they've got another season? Because
what's For All Mankind?
It's the Mike and Denise. It's the show that Mike is retiring on. It's a NASA-esque show, but with a bit more sci-fi, but quite grounded. And it's a very hard edge. They built like an entire mission control style station that Mike designed all the interfaces for and such. It's got very, very good reviews. I don't know much about it, but it's gritty but not dark, real but not obnoxious, and still the sci-fi element. And it's got, I know it's quite expensive, but it's one I definitely look forward to watching at some point. It's not. I can barely watch shows I'm watching. You know, I have to watch this for my job, so I have to make time. Orville was it would definitely make time for. And Obi-wan was I really have to make time for that. I missed out on the last 4 Halos because I just didn't have time. But I look forward to watching them as like a binge, which will be fun. But yes, thanks guys so much. We will see you next week. I am here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday I'll be here, but my first actor arrives for Trek Shorts. And then, after 4 years of build-up, we're finally filming Convergence on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday. A rather expensive, rather complicated shoot for all 4 days. It's a long script, a lot of stuff to do, there's a lot for me to keep in my mind, and we're doing a lot of green screen for that. Although it does make not really any costume changes, it's more a big story. So please guys, wish me luck, and those that see this in retrospect in the comments. It's going to be a lot of work, so I won't be around on the Friday for sure, but I'll certainly be around on the Thursday for this review. Hopefully I'll do this on the Thursday next week, because it'll be the last time I can. But I'll be definitely dead on the Tuesday when you see me. Although, thanks for reminding me and myself, I'm aiming to attempt a Trekyards on Sunday night, but again, it'll be dependent on how many of you turn up and super chat to get me drunk, because those things only evolve if you guys join us. So if you want to join into that, please do. It's kind of a celebratory birthday one, as I'm doing both my birthday on Sunday with the family, but also on Tuesday, my actual day, and then maybe Sunday night with you guys. So wish me luck. Hopefully see you then. And until then, thanks for joining us, Dad, and
live long and prosper.
Exactly. So until next time.